The landscape
The golden
is a
era of the
vacuum
Mammoth
of
steppe.
heat.
The sun rises over the vast
void
expanse
where
of the
the
Mammoth steppe,
temperature
casting long,
plunges
pale
50
shadows across a world
degrees
dominated
below
by
the
grass and
freezing
ice.
point.
This is a landscape of endless horizons, where the sky meets the earth in a crisp, unbroken line. The air is dry and cold, carrying the scent of sagebrush and the distant metallic tang of snow. Here, under the pale blue dome of the Pleistocene sky,
The
giants roam.
survival of the
The herd
woolly
moves slowly
titan
through the
is
tall,
not
nutrient-rich
merely a
grasses.
matter of
These are not merely
behavior,
animals wandering aimlessly.
but a triumph
The group is a
of
fortress, a family,
architectural
and a society
engineering.
bound by ancient bloodlines. At the front walks the matriarch. The great leader is immense, a mountain of shaggy fur and muscle, possessing curved ivory tusks that sweep outward and upward like the arches of a cathedral. The fur,
The
thick and matted
primary
with the dust of the
defense
plains,
against the
protects the
biting
titan from
cold
the biting
is the
winds that
coat,
scour the steppe.
a complex,
Every step the leader takes is deliberate,
dual-layered suit
testing the
of
frozen
armor
ground,
that
guiding the
covers
family toward
every
the best
inch
grazing
of the
grounds known
massive
from memory.
frame.
Behind the leader, the rest of the family follows in a loose formation.
The outer
The bond
layer
between these beings is visible in
consists
every
of the
movement.
guard
The
hairs,
adults flank the younger ones, creating a
strands
living wall
that
of
are
wool and
coarse,
strength. A calf,
thick,
small
and
only in
incre-
comparison to the elders,
The
trots near the
guard
center of the
hairs
group.
hang
The
from
young
the
one is playful,
flanks and the
trunk swinging
belly,
wildly at the stalks
like a
of sedge,
heavy,
occasionally
shaggy
stumbling over
curtain,
tufts of frozen earth.
touching
Whenever the
the
juvenile
snow.
falters, a reassuring
create-
trunk from a nearby adult reaches
This
out,
outer
a gentle
thatch
touch that
is
rights the
not
small creature without
designed
halting
for
the march.
warmth,
There is no need for
but
vocal
for
commands. The physical
protection.
connection speaks of safety and belonging. The intelligence of the herd is woven into the very silence of the plains. These creatures possess minds capable of holding vast maps of the landscape, remembering the location of water sources from seasons long past, and recalling the safest paths through treacherous ravines. The leader
it is
pauses.
designed to
The
shed
trunk,
the water
marvel of
from
dexterity
the
and
sleet
strength, rises
before
into
the
the air.
moisture
The tip
can
curls,
penetrate
sniffing the wind.
the skin.
The senses are sharp, capable of detecting a predator or a storm long before either appears on the horizon. Communication among the herd happens on a level that the wind itself
Beneath
seems
this
to carry.
rugged
A low rumble
exterior
originates
lies
deep within
the
the chest of
true
the matriarch.
insulator.
This sound is below
The
the range of many
underwool.
other ears, a vibration that travels not just through the air, but through the ground itself. The other members of the herd stop grazing. The great feet, padded and sensitive, detect the tremor in the earth. The message is received. It is a signal of reassurance.
This
A constant
curly,
acoustic tether that
matted
keeps the
wool
group
traps
connected even
air
when spread out
close
across
to the
rolling
body,
hills. The social
creating
structure
a
is built on
stagnant
respect and
layer of
experience.
warmth
The eldest
that the
female
wind
holds the knowledge
cannot
necessary for
disturb.
survival. The others look to the
The
matriarch not out of
efficiency
fear,
of this
but out of
system
reliance on
is
this
so
accumulated
high
wisdom.
that
When the leader
snow
stops to dig for roots
falling
beneath
on
the
the
snow,
back
the
of
others
the
wait
beast
or join in,
does not
trusting the
melt.
decision. The hierarchy is clear but
The
benevolent.
heat is
Disputes are
contained
rare and settle
so
quickly with a shake of the
effectively
head or a
that
flare
the
of the
outer
ears.
surface
The focus is always on the
remains as
collective
cold
well-being,
as the
on the survival
air
of the next
surrounding
generation.
the creature.
As the day progresses, the sun
To
climbs
maintain the
warming the backs of the
integrity of
travelers.
this coat,
The herd
the
arrives at a
skin
riverbed,
is
partially
studded
frozen
with
but flowing with
sebaceous
clear, cold water.
glands that secrete
This is a time for
thick,
social bonding.
greasy
The giants
oil.
wade into the shallows, the water
This
splashes
natural
against the thick coats,
lanolin
turning the
acts
dark
as
fur
a
almost black.
waterproofing
Trunks
agent,
spray water in arcs
ensuring
that
that
catch
the
the light.
wool remains
calf rolls
dry
in mud near
even
the
when the
bank, coating the skin in
animal
a
wades
protective
through
layer against
partially
insects.
frozen rivers.
Here, the emotional depth
The
of the
scent
species
of the
becomes most
oil
apparent.
is heavy
Two adults
and
stand
musky,
side by side, trunks
a
intertwined.
chemical
This
signature
gesture is not
that
merely functional,
permeates
it is a
the
display of
air
affection and
around the
recognition.
herd.
The creatures breathe in each other's scent,
Beneath the
reinforcing the
fur
chemical
and the
signals that
thin,
define the family unit.
leathery
The eyes, framed by long lashes, watch one another with a calm, steady gaze. There is a profound gentleness in these interactions, a stark
This
contrast to the sheer
blubber
physical
is
power
not
the bodies
merely
possess.
insulation.
The intelligence of the
The
species
fat
extends to problem
is a
solving.
battery.
A large branch blocks the path to a particularly lush patch of willow. Instead of going around, the subadult
During
approaches
the
the obstacle.
short, frantic
Using the tusks
summer,
as levers
the
and the trunk
giant
as a gripping tool,
consumes
the
vast
beast manipulates the
quantities
wood,
of grass,
snapping the branch and clearing the
converting
way.
the excess
This is not
energy
instinct, this is
into
understanding
lipid
physics in
storage.
a practical, immediate
A
sense.
distinctive
The observer
high
can see the
hump on the
calculation, the
shoulders,
assessment of weight and
supported
leverage
by
before the action
long
is taken.
spinal vertebrae,
As the afternoon wears on, the
serves
steppe
as
comes
a
alive with other
concentrated
sounds.
depot
The
of
call
this
of a distant
energy.
lion, the chirping of birds
In the
hidden
depths
in
of the winter,
the herd remains alert
when the
but
food
calm.
is buried
The defense
and
strategy is
scarce,
formidable.
the
Should a threat
metabolism
appear, the
draws
adults form
upon
a
this
circle,
reserve
facing
to
outward,
keep the
tusks
internal
lowered like a
fires
phalanx of
burning.
spears. The calves are herded into the center, shielded by tons of muscle and bone. But today is peaceful. The predators keep a respectful distance, knowing that the cost of attacking such a united front is too high. The grazing continues.
Unlike
The
the
trunks tear up great
ancestors
clumps
from
of
warmer
grass,
climates,
shaking off the
ears
dirt
of
before
this
placing the
northern
food into the
titan
mouth.
are small
The
and
grinding
rounded,
of molars is a rhythmic sound,
tucked
a
close to
constant
the
accompaniment
head
to
to
the rustle of the
minimize
wind.
surface area.
The appetite of the giants
The
is
tail
insatiable.
is short,
The massive
a
bodies
mere
require fuel to
flap
maintain
of
heat
skin
in a
and
frigid
hair
environment.
that covers the
The
rear,
landscape is shaped by this feeding.
featuring a
By clearing
specialized
saplings
hood
and
of
churning the
skin
soil,
to
the herd
protect
prevents the
against
forest
freezing
from encroaching on the
drafts.
grassland,
Every
maintaining the very
aspect of the
ecosystem that
silhouette
supports the
is
giants.
compacted,
The mammoths are not just
reducing
inhabitants
the
of the steppe.
exposure
The
of
creatures
the
are the
blood
architects
to
of
the
the steppe.
chill.
As evening approaches, the temperature drops rapidly. The sky turns a bruised purple,
Dominating
and
the
the first
front
stars
of
begin
the
to
skull
appear.
is the
The herd
most
draws closer
iconic
together.
tool
The
of
bodies press against
survival.
one another, sharing
The
warmth.
tusks,
The leader selects a
which
sleeping
grow
spot,
in a
a sheltered
dramatic
depression in the land that offers some
spiraling.
protection
The
from the
sheer
night
weight
wind.
of the tusks,
The calf settles down,
often
nestled against the
exceeding
flank of the
dozens
mother.
kilograms,
The breathing of the group
requires
slows,
a
becoming a
massive
synchronized
neck
rhythm that echoes
structure
the slow pulse
anchored
of the
by
season.
thick cables
In this
of
golden
muscle.
era, the balance seems eternal. The relationship between the land and the giants is perfect. The matriarch stands watch for a while longer, a silent sentinel against the darkening horizon. The great tusks gleam in the twilight. The memory of the day, the path walked, the water tasted, the bond reaffirmed, is stored away in the vast, complex brain. The steppe is quiet, save for the wind whispering through the grass. The giants rest, masters of a world that was made for the mammoths, and a world the mammoths made for themselves. This is the time of plenty, the time of peace before the turning of the tides. A moment frozen in the amber of time where the woolly titans reign supreme. The eternal winter and the new enemy. The seasons shift, but the warmth does not return. The golden hue of the steppe fades into a stark, blinding white. The sun, once a benevolent provider of heat,
The
becomes a
engine
distant,
that
pale
drives
disk
this
hanging in a sky of
biological
bleached enamel.
machine is
The wind changes voice,
digestive system,
the gentle whisper of the grasslands
driven
turns
by
into a
a
howling shriek that
voracious
scours the
appetite.
earth, stripping away the topsoil and piling the snow into mountainous drifts.
The mouth
This is the onset of the long
equipped
freeze,
with
a
four
climatic tightness that
massive
squeezes the life from the
molars,
plains.
each
The temperature drops to
size
levels
of a
previously
brick,
unknown. The air is so
designed to
cold that the
grind
moisture freezes instantly upon exhalation, surrounding the herd in clouds of crystalline vapor. The grazing grounds, once vast and bountiful, disappear beneath layers of hard, compacted ice. The search for sustenance becomes a grueling, ceaseless march. The leader drives the tusks deep into the frozen crust, shattering the ice to reach the withered, brown vegetation trapped underneath. The sound of ivory striking permafrost echoes across the desolate landscape,
The
a rhythmic
blood
chipping that marks the
itself
passage
is
of time.
adapted to
The herd
the
moves slower
extreme
now.
environment,
The energy required to maintain
possessing
body
a
heat is
chemical
immense. The
structure
thick layers
that
of fat
allows
stored
the
during the
release
time
of
plenty begin to
oxygen.
dwindle. The massive coats of wool and guard hair grow longer,
Every
denser,
system
matting together
is
to form an
tuned
impenetrable
to
shield
a
against the biting
singular
gales.
purpose.
Snow clings to the fur,
And the
turning the dark
fortress
giants into ghostly
stands,
silhouettes moving against a backdrop
warm.
of endless white. The playful splashing in the river is a memory. The water sources are locked away, turned to stone by the relentless frost. The animals eat snow to quench thirst, lowering the body temperature further, a dangerous but necessary trade-off. The landscape itself transforms.
Deep
The open
within
horizons
the
are
marrow
broken by
of the
encroaching walls of
frozen
ice,
remains,
glaciers that
the
creep forward
genetic
with the slowness of
blueprint
geologic time,
survives.
grinding the mountains into
A
dust.
long
The trees, the few that remain, are stunted, twisted shapes, stripped of
To
leaves and bark by the
understand
wind.
the woolly
The silence of
titan
the steppe is
is to
heavier,
read
deeper.
this ancient
The calls of the
text
birds are gone,
and
the insects
compare
are
the
silent.
script.
The world
The
feels
two
empty,
lineages
save for the wind
share
and the
a
crunch of snow
common
under the heavy feet.
ancestor.
Then
A
a new scent
traveler
arrives
that
on the freezing
walked the
breeze.
earth
The smell is
millions of
alien,
years
sharp,
ago.
and acrid.
But
The aroma carries the tang of burnt wood,
diverged.
a scent that does not belong in a world of ice, and underneath that, the musk of something living but unfamiliar. The leader stops. The trunk rises, testing the air. The sensory organs analyze the particles. This is not the scent of the lion or the wolf. This is the scent of the interloper. On the ridge, the silhouettes appear. The figures are small, insignificant compared to the bulk of the mammoth. The newcomers stand on two legs, distinct from the four-legged predators of the plains. The creatures possess no fur to
genome
protect
of
the
the
skin from the
mammoth
cold.
is a
Instead, the
modified
bodies are
version
wrapped
of
in the
the
stolen skins of other animals.
elephantine code, edited
The strange
by the
beings do not possess
ruthless
claws or
hand of
fangs
nat-
These
that can pierce the
edits
hide
are
of a mammoth.
precise,
The bipeds look
targeting
frail, shivering in the
specific
wind,
functions
huddled together for
necessary
warmth.
for
However,
survival
the small
in the
stature belies a lethal
cryosphere.
capability. The figures move with a coordination that rivals the wolf pack,
The
but with a
first
terrifying
and
precision.
most vital
In the hands, the strangers carry
alteration
extended claws
lies
made of
in
wood
the
and
blood.
stone. The tips of these artificial talons glint in the weak sunlight. The bipeds do not roar. The communication is a series of sharp, guttural sounds, complex and rapid. The group spreads out, encircling the path of the herd, not closing in, but waiting. The herd senses the threat. The defensive instinct triggers. The adults move to form the phalanx, the tusks facing outward, a wall of bone and muscle designed to
the
repel the
extremities
tigers and
of
the
the
bears.
body
But
drop
the enemy does not charge.
significantly in
The enemy waits.
temperature.
The strangers use the terrain, hiding behind snowdrifts and boulders, appearing and disappearing like phantoms.
For a normal
Suddenly,
elephant,
a flash of movement.
this cooling
One of the
would
wooden
cause
claws
the
flies through the
hemoglobin
air,
to hold
propelled
on
not
to
by
the
muscle alone,
oxygen
but by a
too
mechanical
tightly.
extension
Our
held in the end of the throat.
biomechanical assessment
projectile strikes.
highlights the
The impact
unique
is not enough to kill a
skeletal
healthy adult
structure.
instantly,
The
but the pain is sharp.
beta-globin mutation
The weapon remains lodged
enhances
in the thick
oxygen
flank.
utilization
The animal bellows,
during
a sound
peak
of shock
exertion.
and anger that rolls across the valley.
This
The circle
genetic
tightens.
tweak
The calves
alters
press
the
inward,
surface
the small
of the
bodies
protein,
trembling not from cold,
allowing
but
the
from the
blood
palpable
to
tension
release
radiating from the
oxygen
elders.
even
The
when the
bipeds
limbs
advance.
are near
The strangers
freezing.
carry fire. A branch, ablaze with red and orange light, is waved in the
It is
air.
a chemical
The mammoths, familiar with the terror of the lightning struck and the wildfire, recoil. The flame is a piece of the sun brought down to earth, controlled by these hairless apes.
The thick,
The smoke stings the
shaggled
eyes.
coat and the
Chaos
heavy layer
disrupts
of
the formation.
fat are not
panic begins to
accidents
set in.
of growth.
This new
but
predator
the
does not
result
hunt with
of a
speed or
specific
strength.
gene
The predator
known
hunts
as
with patience and intellect.
TRP.
The strategy is to isolate, to weary, to bleed. The humans separate a straggler from the main group. The focus shifts. The collective defense is broken by the confusion of the fire and the flying stingers. The isolated mammoth turns to face the tormentors.
In the
The
mammoth,
trunk lashes out, a
the
deadly
gene
bludgeon, but
carries
the targets
a
are small and quick,
mutation
dodging the blows
that
with agility.
creates a
The attack is
dampening
relentless.
effect.
The humans work as a single organism, a hive mind focused on the takedown. The spears fly again and again. The snow becomes stained with crimson. The sheer endurance of the mammoth, usually the greatest asset, becomes a curse, prolonging the struggle. The giant fights the exhaustion, the blood loss, and the biting cold, but the outcome is written in the determination of the attackers. The rest of the herd is forced to move on. The survival of the group outweighs the fate of the individual. The bond, so strong in the golden era, is strained by the necessity of escape. The matriarch leads the survivors away from the ambush, pushing through the deep drifts, putting distance between the family and the smoke. The sounds of the struggle fade behind, swallowed by the wind.
The
Night
rhythm
falls,
of
bringing with
life
the
in
darkness
the
a temperature that
Arctic
freezes
is
the marrow.
different from the
The herd
tropics.
stops in the lee of a rocky
The
outcrop.
sun does not
The
rise
numbers are
and
fewer.
set in
The
a
circle is smaller.
12-hour cycle.
The sense of invulnerability is shattered.
The
The world has changed. The ice is a
oscillates
constant enemy,
between the
stealing the warmth
endless
and the food.
day of the
But the new
summer
arrival, the hairless
and the
walker,
eternal
represents a
night
different kind of
the
winter,
winter.
a winter of violence and calculation. The bipeds are now a permanent part of the landscape. The shadows on the horizon are watched with a new intensity. The intelligence of the mammoth, once used to map the water and the grass, must now act to outmaneuver a rival that thinks, plans,
The
and kills with
mammoth,
tools.
however, carries a
peaceful coexistence of
mutation
the steppe
in the
is over.
PER2
The struggle is no
gene,
longer just against the
a
elements.
component
The struggle
of
is
the
against a rising tide of
circadian
cunning
rhythm.
that threatens to wash away the reign of the giants. Under the shimmering curtains of
This
the northern lights,
alteration
the herd huddles together,
essentially
the breath
loosens
rising
the
in the
grip
freezing
of the
air, waiting for a
24-hour
dawn that offers
clock,
little promise of relief.
allowing the beast to
The era of the
forage
eternal
and
winter has
function
begun, and the masters of
irregularly.
the plains are no
metabolism
longer
is
alone.
unchained from the rising
Great Migration.
sun, permitting the
The decision to leave the familiar
maximize
grazing
the
grounds
intake
is
of
not
food
spoken,
whenever
but felt.
The resources
The
are
silence of
available,
the frozen plains, once a
regardless
source of
the
peace,
time
has
of
become a
day.
vacuum where life cannot exist. The roots beneath the
Even
ice are exhausted.
appearance of
The wind carries
herd
only the
is
scent of frost and
dictated
stone.
by the role
stay
of
is
the
to perish.
genetic dice.
The ancient instinct buried deep
While the
within the genetic
popular
memory of the
image
species
portrays
awakens.
a-
It is a pull, a magnetic compulsion drawing the herd toward the south, toward the rumor of a sun that still holds warmth. The migration begins not with a run, but with a single, heavy step taken by the leader, and pointing the great curved tusks toward the horizon where the
Some
gray sky meets the white
individuals
earth.
carried a
The
dominant
journey traverses a
version
landscape
of the
that
gene,
defies the living. The terrain
resulting
shifts from
in
the
a
flat steppe
dark,
to the jagged, broken teeth
almost
of the glacial
black
fields.
coat.
Here, the ground is not soil, but a
Others
solid,
possessed
blue,
a
translucent sheet of ice that
recessive
stretches for
mutation that
miles.
reduced the
The footing is
production of
treacherous.
eumelanin,
The pads of the feet, designed for
resulting
the
in a
soft, giving
coat
earth
that
of the
was
grasslands,
pale,
slide and struggle
perhaps
on the slick
ginger
surface.
or blonde.
Every step requires a calculation of balance. The immense weight of the giants,
The
usually an
herd
advantage,
was
becomes a
a
liability.
tapestry of
A stumble here means a
shades
fall,
moving
and a fall on the
against
unyielding
white
ice can mean a broken
snow.
limb, a sentence of death
A
in this merciless
variation
environment.
driven.
The wind on the glacier is a
However,
visible
the
force.
genetic
It strikes the
story
herd with
has
the
a
violence of
final,
a solid object,
tragic
stripping the warmth
chapter
from the thickest
as the
fur. The
population
woolly coats are caked in
retreated
rime,
to the
turning the animals into
isolation
moving
of
sculptures of
Wrangell
ice.
Island.
The eyelashes
And
freeze
the
shut,
cloud,
requiring the giants to blink forcefully
robust
to clear
and
the vision.
diverse,
The breath comes in
became
ragged clouds
repetitive and
that are whipped away
fractured,
instantly. There is no
leading to
shelter
a
here.
phenomenon
No trees to break the
known as
wind, no hollows to
genomic
curl into.
meltdown.
There is only the exposure, the relentless forward motion, and the endurance of the body against the elements. Hunger is a constant companion. The reserves of fat are gone. The skin hangs looser on the frame. The definition of the ribs
The
and the
genes
pelvic bones becomes
responsible
visible
for the
beneath
sense
the
of
matted hair.
smell,
The
so
trunk
vital
searches
for
ceaselessly
finding
as the group
food
moves,
and sensing
scouring the ice
mates,
for lichens
lost
or moss,
function,
anything that might
and the
offer a calorie of
olfactory
energy.
map of the world
Occasionally, the
faded.
leader stops at a patch where the wind has scoured the ice thin,
This
using the
mutation
tusks to
resulted
shatter the
in the
surface and reveal a
satin
meager
coat
tuft of frozen
defect.
brown scrub.
The
The
wool
herd
is
shares these small
silky and
bounties, a mouthful here,
translucent,
a branch there,
offering no
never enough to sate the
insulation.
hunger, but enough to keep the muscles moving for another hour, another mile. The path leads through a narrow valley, flanked by towering walls of compressed snow and rock. The acoustics of the canyon amplify the sound of the wind, creating a disorienting cacophony. It is here,
The
in the shadows of the
majestic
cliffs,
code,
that the danger multiplies.
which had engineered
The saber-toothed
a
cat is a
masterpiece
creature of the
survival,
ambush, a
capable
predator
of
that
the
thrives in the
ice.
broken terrain where the massive prey cannot maneuver easily. The scent of the cat is masked by the storm, but the presence is felt. The hair on the neck of the leader stands up, the vibration of the ground changes, the attack comes from above. The predator leaps
The
from a rock ledge,
disappearance
a
of
blur
the
of tawny fur
giants
and
is
muscle.
not a single
The target
event,
is the calf,
but
the
a
smallest and
complex
weakest link in the chain.
unraveling.
The cat
A
lands with a
mystery
terrifying impact,
debated
the weight
by the
designed to topple.
inheritors of the earth.
The long serrated canines evolve to slice through thick hide and sever arteries, flash in the gray light. The sound of the roar is distinct, a sawing, guttural rasp that cuts through the wind. But the herd is not helpless, the reaction is instantaneous. The lethargy of starvation vanishes, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. The mother of the calf spins, the massive bulk moving with surprising speed. The trunk lashes out, striking the attacker midair. The blow is not enough to stop the cat, but it ruins the
betrayal.
The fangs miss the vital throat, grazing the shoulder instead. The calf bellows, a high-pitched sound of terror. The formation collapses into a defensive knot. The adults
world
surround the young one,
warms,
facing outward.
and
The canyon floor becomes an arena of chaos.
which had locked
The saber-tooth
away
is
the
agile,
ocean's
darting in and out,
moisture for
looking for an opening in
millennia,
the wall of tusks.
begin
The cat
to
is
weep.
desperate to. The hunger of the winter affects the hunter as much as the prey. This is a battle of survival for both species. The predator leaps again, claws tearing at the flank. Of an elder, the thick wool offers some protection, but the blood begins to flow, bright and steaming on the snow. The leader charges. The matriarch does not wait for the predator to come close, but closes the distance with a thundering rush. The head lowers, the tusks sweeping in a wide, deadly arc. The cat, realizing the shift in momentum, attempts to scramble up the canyon wall. The ivory catches the hind leg, tossing the predator into the air. The cat lands hard on the ice, snarling, but the advantage is lost. The wall of giants is
The
impenetrable.
mammoth
The
step,
combined bellowing of the
that
herd creates a wall of
vast
sound that
solar
reverberates
panel
off
of
the cliffs, a
high-protein
declaration of strength that
grasses
shakes the snow from the rocks
relies
above.
on
The predator
aridity.
retreats, limping into the whiteout, vanishing as quickly as the phantom appeared.
As the
The
moisture
victory is won,
increases,
but the cost is
the
paid in
ground
energy and blood.
softens,
The
and
wounded elder breathes
permafrost,
heavily, the side
the solid
heaving.
foundation
The others gather
of the
around,
north
trunks touching the injury,
retreats
cleaning the wound
downward.
with snow. There is no
The
time to
dry,
rest.
firm
To stop now,
soil
with the scent of
turns
blood in the
into a
air, would be to invite
sponge,
others.
and
The march must
nutritious
continue.
grasses
The calf,
drown,
shaken but alive,
their
is
roots
ushered into the center
rotting
of the
in
group,
boggy
pressed between the
earth.
warm bodies of the
In
adults.
their place
The days blur
rises
into a cycle of
new
light and dark,
green
indistinguishable from the
enemy.
blizzard. The river crossings are the
moss
hardest trials.
and
The
the
water is black
lichen.
and swift, flowing beneath partial sheets of ice. The giants
These
must wade
plants
through the
are
freezing
poor
current,
in
the water
nutrients,
rising to the chest,
filled with
threatening to sweep
toxic
the smaller members
chemicals,
away.
and
The
offer
cold of the water
little
is
energy
paralyzing.
to a machine
legs numb,
as
the muscles
demanding
cramp.
as the mammoth.
The leader breaks the path, shattering the
To
ice floes
eat
with the
the
chest,
moss
creating a wake
is
for the
to
others to follow.
starve with a
Upon exiting the
full
river,
belly.
the water freezes instantly on the fur, adding weight to the already exhausted frames. Yet the destination pulls the travelers onward.
Worse still,
The terrain
is
begins
the
to
march
change.
of the
The
trees,
jagged peaks of the glaciers give
as
way
the
to rolling
warming
hills.
air
The ice
allows
becomes
the
thinner,
birch and
revealing
the
patches of
spruce
dark earth.
to escape
The wind
river
loses the
valleys.
razor edge, carrying a heaviness that suggests moisture and thaw. The sun, for the first time in months, breaks through the cloud cover, not as a pale disk, but as a source of genuine heat. The herd crests a ridge and stops. Below, the valley stretches
the
out,
trees
green and
are a
vibrant.
physical
The snow line
barrier,
ends abruptly,
and the
replaced by a
massive
carpet of tundra
bodies
grass,
of the
dwarf
herd
willows, and
cannot
flowing water.
maneuver
The
through
smell of the earth
dense,
is overwhelming, rich,
tangled
damp, and alive.
undergrowth.
This is the promised land. the destination that lived in the memory of the leader, a refuge from the encroaching ice. The pace quickens. The exhaustion is forgotten for a moment. The giants descend the slope, the gravity aiding the movement. The first taste of the fresh grass is a sensory explosion. The juice of the plants, the texture of the green shoots, the sheer abundance of it. The herd disperses, not in chaos, but in relief. The trunks tear at the vegetation, feeding with a voracious intensity. The water in the valley streams liquid, accessible and sweet. The migration has taken a toll. The bodies are scarred, thin, and weary. But the survival of the bloodline is secured.
This
The
traps
calf plays in the
herds of
shallow mud,
bison
the
in
terror of the canyon
pockets
fading
where
into the
food
resilience.
runs out.
The leader
and the
stands at the edge of
genetic
the new territory,
diversity
looking back at the white
withers.
mountains in the distance. The barrier has been crossed. The winter
The
has
climate
been outrun.
does not
Here,
kill
under the
with a
warming
weapon.
sun, the life of the herd can
Climate
begin again.
kills
The
by
cycle
shrinking
continues,
the
driven by the
room
will to survive,
required to live.
the strength of the bond, and the enduring power of the giants who walked the earth when the world was ice.
However, the second
last of the
theory
Titans.
argues that the
The world
climate
has shrunk.
alone
The vast,
was not
endless horizons
enough.
of the steppe, once measured in months of travel, are now contained within the boundaries of a single island. The ocean, gray and restless, surrounds this final refuge, a barrier of rising water that swallowed the land bridge generations ago. The connection to the mainland is severed.
This time,
The giants are
the
alone,
warming
castaways on a
coincided
fragment of
with
land,
the
drifting in the
arrival
Arctic
of a
Sea.
new factor.
The era of the Great Migration is a genetic
bipedal
memory,
hunter.
a ghost haunting the instincts of the
Overkill
survivors.
hypothesis.
There is nowhere left to walk.
The mammoths
always
of the
ends at the
north
crashing waves.
are what is known
climate, too,
as
has betrayed the herd.
naive prey.
The cold, dry air that
having
sustained the
evolved
ancestors has
in
been replaced by
isolation
damp, creeping
from
warmth.
this specific
The sky weeps rain
predator.
instead of snow. The water freezes on the ground,
When
sealing the
faced
grass
with
beneath
danger,
impenetrable layers of ice.
the herd
The vegetation is changing.
instinctively
The nutrient-rich
forms an
grasses are being choked out by
impenetrable
moss,
wall of
lichen, and scrub brush
tusks and
that offer
fur.
little sustenance to the massive bodies. The island is green, but it is a green that starves. The herd is a shadow of the former glory. The animals are smaller now, the stature diminished by centuries of isolation and limited resources. The towering height of the ancestors is
indigenous
fading,
male
replaced by a
hunter
compact, sturdier frame
exploits
designed to
this
conserve
ignorance,
energy in a world of
for the
scarcity.
weapon
The
is
coats are
not
thinner,
just
and
the
patches of skin
spear,
visible through the wool,
but the
worn away by
strategy.
parasites and the relentless humid wind. The tusks
The
are brittle, prone to
reproduction of
snapping
the
against
giant
the ice.
sperm
But the
whale
greatest
is
toll
slow.
is silent. The
A
bloodline is failing.
female
The
carries a
calves are born
calf
few
for
and far
nearly
between,
2
and those
years.
that arrive are often weak,
The
unable to
investment
stand,
in the
or claimed
next
by sickness before
generation
the first
is
winter.
immense,
The genetic
and the
pool is a stagnant
maturation
pond.
takes
The
over a
vitality that once allowed the
decade,
species to conquer continents
focusing
is
on
eroding
an
from within.
adolescent female.
The eyes of the elders hold a dull resignation. There is no thunder of 100 feet shaking the earth anymore. There is only the shuffle of the few, the sound of heavy breathing in the fog. Time passes, measured not in seasons, but in losses. The small group dwindles. One by one, the companions fall.
mathematics of
Some are claimed by the
extinction
treacherous
are
ravines hidden beneath
brutal.
the snow.
A
Some succumb to the
kill
hunger,
rate
the teeth
slightly
worn down to the
higher
gums,
than the birth
unable to
rate.
grind the tough woody shrubs. Others simply lie down and do not rise, the spirit exhausted by the struggle against a world that no longer has a place for them. The circle of defense, once unbreakable, becomes a line, then a pair.
The
Finally,
ivory
there is only one.
harvested.
The last survivor
The
stands on a bluff
bones
overlooking the
used
gray
for
ocean.
shelter.
The wind tears
The
at the
meat
shaggy, matted fur.
dried for
The creature is
the winter.
old, the skin hanging in heavy folds around the neck and flanks.
The
tusks are
success of
stained
the
and
adult
chipped,
human
veterans of a
creates
thousand
a
battles
vacuum
against the
for
ice.
the mammoth.
The solitude
and as
is
the
absolute.
adult
The
human
acoustic world, once
population
filled with the rumbles
expands,
and trumpets
the
of family,
pressure on
is
the
now defined by
prey
the scream of
increases.
seabirds and the roar of the surf. The Ancient One lifts the
is a
trunk, sending a low, mournful call into the mist. The sound vibrates through the chest, a frequency that can travel for miles. It is a question asked of the empty air. Is there another? The beast waits. The large ears flare, straining for a response. The silence that follows is heavier than the glacier. No answer comes from the valleys. No answering rumble trembles in the ground. The realization is not an intellectual thought, but a crushing physical weight. The connection is broken. The web is unraveled. The days are spent in a slow, wandering loop. The survivor visits the old places, the dried riverbeds where the herd once bathed, the sheltered coves where the calves once played. These locations are empty stages, devoid of actors. The memory of the others is etched into the landscape, sensed by the survivor in the scent
This
of old
narrow
bones and the worn
corridor
paths, that are slowly being
Flanked
reclaimed by the
steep
moss.
slopes.
The loneliness is a living
the only
thing, a
way
shadow that
through.
walks beside the giant, darker and colder
The
than
herd
nature.
must navigate.
The hunger is a dull ache, a constant companion that
This
no longer drives the
location
urgency of the
is
hunt.
not chosen
The old one
by
eats
chance.
mechanically, stripping the bark from dwarf
The
willows,
terrain's
chewing
been
slowly.
studied,
The energy required to
observed
move
for
the massive bulk
seasons.
becomes a burden. The steps grow shorter, the pauses grow longer. The world is becoming blurred, the edges of vision softening as the strength fades. The end does not come with violence. There are no predators here to challenge the monarch, no hunters with spears to hasten the inevitable. The end comes with a quiet surrender. The survivor finds a hollow near a spring, a place sheltered from the biting wind. The ground is soft, damp with the meltwater. The giant lowers the heavy body,
Patience
the knees
displayed
bending
is
with a
not
slow,
the
creaking
patience
grace.
of a scavenger,
The belly touches the earth,
but the
tusks rest upon the
calculated
moss.
stillness
For a
of
long time, the
trap
creature simply
waiting
breathes.
to be
The
sprung.
chest rises and falls, a slowing rhythm. The eyes, dark and amber, watch the clouds drift across the pale sky. Perhaps, in the fading synapses of the ancient brain, the mist clears. Perhaps the green island expands back into the endless white steppe.
This is
Perhaps
a
the silence is
simple
filled again
length
with
of
the warm,
wood
comforting rumble
hooked
of
at
the
the
mother,
end,
the playful shove
but
of
it
the sibling,
acts as an
the presence of the herd.
artificial joint,
The isolation dissolves into
a
memory.
lever.
The breathing hitches,
Resting in the
stops.
groove of
The great
this
heart,
launcher
a drum
is
that
the
is beaten
dart,
through the storms of
a
decades,
long,
gives one final
flexible
shuddering
shaft,
pulse and falls
tipped
silent.
with a point
The warmth
of
begins to leave the
napped
body,
flint.
seeping into the cold ground. The wind continues to blow, indifferent, ruffling the fur of the stillness. The island remains. The birds continue to cry out over the cliffs. The waves continue to batter the shore. But a frequency has vanished from the
The
world.
tip
A
is
thread that
fluted,
stretched back through the ice
allowing
ages,
it to
through
be
the rise and
hafted
fall of
securely
mountains,
to the
has been
shaft.
snapped. On a lonely island at the edge of the map, under the indifferent gaze of the polar sky, the reign of the Titans has ended. The last breath is exhaled, and with it, an entire epoch fades into the silence of history, leaving only the bones to whisper the story of when giants walked the earth. Anatomy of survival.
Detailed
The biological
analysis
fortress.
confirms significant
The landscape is a vacuum of
biomechanical
heat,
stress.
a frozen void where the
Energy
temperature
levels
plunges
are
50 degrees
rapidly
below the freezing
decreasing,
point.
leading
In this
to
domain,
accelerated
biology must
muscle
wage a constant
fatigue.
war against
The
thermodynamics.
signal is given.
The survival of the woolly titan
A
is not merely a matter of
mimicry of a
behavior,
bird
but a
call.
triumph of architectural
A
engineering.
sound that
The body of the
belongs
giant
to
is a
the
self-contained
steppe.
ecosystem, a fortress designed to retain every calorie of warmth and repel the relentless assault of the polar wind. The primary defense against the biting cold is the coat, a complex, dual-layered suit of armor that covers every inch of the massive frame. The outer layer consists of the guard hairs. These strands are coarse, thick, and incredibly long, some reaching nearly a meter in length. The guard hairs hang from the flanks and the belly like a heavy, shaggy curtain, touching the snow and creating a skirt that shields the legs and the sensitive underside. This outer thatch is not designed for warmth, but for protection. The texture is wire-like, tough enough to deflect the sharp crystals of ice carried by the gale and to shed the water from the sleet before the moisture can penetrate to the skin. Beneath this rugged exterior lies the true insulator, the underlayer. This layer is a marvel of biological density. The fibers are soft, fine, and packed so tightly together that the skin beneath is invisible. This curly, matted wool traps air close to the body, creating a stagnant layer of warmth that the wind cannot disturb. The air, heated by the blood of the giant, remains held within this tangled web, forming a thermal barrier that separates the internal organs from the freezing world outside. The efficiency of this system is so high that snow falling on the back of the beast does not melt. The heat is contained so effectively that the outer surface remains as cold as
A
the air surrounding the
defensive
creature.
circle is the
To maintain the
mammoth's
integrity of
best
this coat,
hope.
the skin is studded with
Yet the
sebaceous
deep
glands.
mud
These
makes
organs
a
secrete a thick,
coordinated
greasy oil that coats the
defense
fur.
impossible.
This natural lanolin acts as a waterproofing agent, ensuring that the wool
narrow
remains dry even when
walls
the
of
animal
the
wades
valley
through partially
prevent
frozen rivers or stands in
formation.
the driving rain.
And
The scent of the oil is heavy and
separates
musky,
the
a chemical
wounded
signature that
animal
permeates the air
further.
around the herd. Beneath the fur and the thick, leathery skin, which itself measures several centimeters in depth, lies the fuel reserve. A layer of subcutaneous fat envelops the entire body, acting as a final seal against the cold. In some places, this layer is 10 centimeters thick. This blubber is not merely insulation, the fat is a battery. During the short, frantic summer, the giant consumes vast quantities of grass, converting the excess energy into this lipid storage. A distinctive high hump on the shoulders, supported by long spinal vertebrae, serves as a concentrated depot of this energy. In the depths of the winter, when the food is buried and scarce, the metabolism draws upon this reserve, burning the fat to keep the internal fires burning and the muscles moving. The extremities of the creature are shaped by the laws of heat conservation. Unlike the ancestors from warmer climates, the ears of this northern titan are small and rounded, tucked close to the head to minimize surface area and prevent frostbite. The tail is short, a mere flap of skin and hair that covers the rear, featuring a specialized hood of skin at the base to protect the anus from the freezing drafts.
with an
Every
efficient
aspect of the silhouette
bipedal
is
gait
compacted,
and sweat
reducing the
glands
exposure
that
of the
cool
blood to the chill.
skin. Can
Dominating the
walk
front of
for
the skull is the
days.
most iconic tool of
The
survival, the
pursuit
tusk.
is a slow,
These are not just weapons, but
rhythmic
essential
pressure.
implements for
The
excavation.
predator is
The ivory
always
grows in a
there,
dramatic spiraling
just
curve,
on the horizon,
sweeping outward and then curling
denying
back
the
inward.
prey a moment
The sheer weight of the
rest.
tusks,
As the
often
sun
exceeding dozens of
dips
kilograms,
low,
requires a massive neck
the
structure
wounded
anchored by high
animal
thoracic vertebrae and thick
slows.
cables of muscle.
the
In the deep winter,
bloodlust
the giant
taking
uses these
a
curved
toll.
sweepers to plow through the snow. With a swing of the head, the
hunters
heavy crust
sense
is
the
shattered and pushed
exhaustion
aside,
and move
revealing the
in,
dried grasses preserved in the
using
natural
the
freezer of the
landscape
tundra.
to cut off
The wear
escape
patterns on the ivory
routes.
speak of a lifetime of scraping against ice and rock, a testament to the ceaseless labor required to eat. The engine that drives this biological machine is the digestive system. The appetite is voracious, a necessary response to the low nutritional value of the frozen vegetation. The mouth is equipped with 4 massive molars, each the size of a brick. The surface of these teeth is a series of hard enamel ridges, designed to grind the tough, silica-rich steppe grass into a pulp. The jaw muscles are immense, capable of a
The
crushing
mire
force that
is a
pulverizes the
depression
fibrous
in the
blades.
land
As the
where
teeth wear down from
meltwater
constant abrasion,
collects,
new
and
plates
the
of enamel
mud
push
is
forward from the
deep
back of the jaw,
and clinging.
ensuring that the grinding capability remains at peak efficiency throughout the
The
life of the
sheer
animal.
weight of the
Once swallowed,
mammoth
the food
proves
enters a
too
cavernous
much
digestive
for the
tract.
fragile
The stomach
crust,
is merely the first chamber.
plunging the
true
beast
alchemy
into
occurs in
the
the hindgut.
clinging mud
The intestines
below.
are incredibly long, a winding tunnel where the
The
plant matter
animal
undergoes
struggles,
fermentation. Here,
but the
in the dark
effort
warmth of the
only
belly,
drives
symbiotic
the
bacteria
limbs
break down the
deeper,
cellulose.
and
This
the
process
weight
is slow and
becomes
inefficient
a
compared to other
prison.
methods, requiring the beast to consume
The
hundreds of
hunters
kilograms of food a day,
close the circle.
but the process
The
yields a crucial
silence of the
byproduct, heat.
stalk,
The
replaced
fermentation
by
vat
the
inside the giant
coordinated
acts as an internal
noise of
furnace,
the kill.
generating a significant amount of thermal energy that radiates outward, warming the blood and the organs from the inside out. The sheer volume of the gut turns the animal into a walking ring. The blood itself is adapted to the extreme environment. The hemoglobin possesses a chemical structure that allows the release of oxygen into the tissues even at extremely low temperatures, ensuring that the extremities, the tip of the trunk, the feet, the ears, remain oxygenated and functional even when the ambient temperature drops to levels that would freeze the
Finally,
flesh of
the
lesser creatures.
legs give way.
The feet, broad and padded,
Mountain
act as
of
snowshoes,
fur
distributing the immense
collapses
weight to
into
prevent
the
sinking.
mud.
The drifts,
and the
while the thick,
hunt
callous pads
is
provide traction on
over.
the slick ice. Every system, from the spiraling ivory to the
Along
microscopic structure of the wool,
Dnieper and
is
Don,
tuned to a singular
these
purpose,
giants
to defy the winter.
navigate a landscape
The creature is a
shaped
masterpiece of
by
evolutionary
ice and
adaptation, a
dramatic
biological
sunlight.
answer to the question of how life can endure in a world of ice. The wind may howl and the sun may fade, but the fortress stands, warm and alive, in the heart of the frozen wasteland. The engineers of the Ice Age. The ecosystem of the Mammoth Steppe. The landscape is not a passive backdrop, but a living entity, shaped and maintained by the very giants that graze upon the surface. This is the Mammoth Steppe, a biome that stretches across the top of the world. A paradox of biology where the cold of the Ice Age coexists with a productivity that rivals the savannas of the south. The secret lies not in the temperature, but in the dryness and the ceaseless activity of the herds. The air is arid, preventing the heavy, suffocating blankets of snow that would kill the vegetation. Instead, the ground is covered in a diverse tapestry of high-energy grasses, herbs, sages, and wildflowers. This is not the boggy,
These
moss-dominated
early
tundra of the later
builders
age.
relied
This is
on
a
the
firm,
colossal
dry grassland,
remains of
a
the
solar
mammoth
panel of the north that
to
turns the endless
construct
daylight
their
of the summer into
settlements
sugar and
against
protein.
the harsh
The relationship
tundra.
between the giant and the grass is a perfect, self-sustaining circle. The mammoth is the keystone, the architect that holds the arch of the ecosystem together. As the herd moves, the massive weight of the bodies acts as a plow and a compactor. The heavy feet churn the soil, breaking the crust and allowing the seeds of the grasses to find purchase in the earth. The constant grazing trims the vegetation, forcing the plants to put energy into rapid regrowth, keeping the shoots young, tender, and nutrient-rich. More importantly, the appetite of the giants wages a war against the forest. The birch and the spruce are the enemies of the steppe.
Powerful
These trees
heat.
cast shadows, blocking the sun that the
Yet,
grasses need.
This
The trees
ain't
acidify the soil with
skulls
drop needles.
act as
But the forest cannot
sockets
gain a
of the
foothold where the
house.
titans roam. The saplings
serving
are
as
trampled,
the heavy
snapped, or
anchor
uprooted by the
points
searching
for
trunks.
the weight of
The bark is stripped for food,
that is to
killing
follow.
the encroaching wood before a canopy can form. By destroying the trees, the herd maintains the open horizon, ensuring that the sunlight reaches the ground to feed the pastures that, in turn, feed the herd. The cycle of nutrients is rapid and massive.
Initiating
In a cold environment,
biomechanical
decomposition
assessment.
is usually slow.
Structural
Dead plant matter can
analysis
sit for decades
confirms
without rotting,
V-shaped
locking away
geometry
minerals.
and high
The
density.
digestive system of the mammoth
Note the
bypasses
muscle
this
group
bottleneck.
activation
The giants
sequence.
consume vast quantities of biomass, processing the material in the internal furnace, and returning the nutrients to the soil in the form of dung. This fertilizer is pre-composted, warm, and ready to be used by the flora. The wake of the herd is a trail of revitalization, turning the sterile dust into rich, dark earth. Even in the winter, the role of the architect is crucial. The snow falls, acting as an insulator. If left undisturbed, the deep snow traps the
Zoom
heat of
in
the
on
earth,
the
preventing the cold
herringbone
air from reaching
pattern
the
of
soil.
the stacked mandibles,
Paradoxically, this insulation
showing
can
how
cause
they
the
lock
permafrost,
together
the frozen
to
foundation
create
of
a
the land, to
windproof
soften.
wall,
The herd changes
insulated
this
by
physics
air
by trampling the
pockets.
snow in search of food. The animals pack the powder down into a dense, thin layer of ice. This removes the insulation. The bitter cold of the winter air is allowed to penetrate deep into the ground, freezing the soil hard, preserving the permafrost. This solid ground prevents the land from turning into a swamp in the summer, keeping the terrain dry and suitable for the grasses. However, when the silence falls and the last giant breathes no more, the machinery of the ecosystem breaks. The gardener is gone, and the garden begins to run wild. Without the heavy feet to churn the moss and the lichen, these slow-growing, low-nutrient plants begin to choke out the nutritious grasses. The moss creates a thick, wet carpet that insulates the ground, keeping the soil cool in summer and warm in winter, disrupting the cycle. Without the trunks to snap the saplings, the forest begins the slow, silent invasion. The dwarf willows and the birches creep forward from the river valleys. The open plains, once a sea of waving grain, are punctuated by scrub and brush. The trees grow taller, casting long shadows. The sun no longer hits the soil. The grasses die in the shade. The distinct dry air of the steppe becomes humid as the trees trap moisture. The most catastrophic change occurs underground. Without the herds to trample the winter snow, the drifts pile high and soft.
Analyzing the skeletal
The earth is shielded from
structure
the deep
of the
freeze of the Arctic
cantilever.
night.
Note
Soil
the
temperature
stress
rises. The
distribution
permafrost,
highlighted
stable
in
for millennia,
red,
begins to melt.
mimicking muscle
The solid ground
exertion
turns into a
under
bog.
load.
The dry, firm earth becomes a wetland, releasing trapped gases, shifting the very foundation of the north. The disappearance of the keystone species triggers a cascade of collapse. The golden era of the steppe was not merely a result of the climate. The era was maintained by the labor of the inhabitants. When the mammoth vanishes, the steppe vanishes with the maker. The productive open world is replaced by the silent boggy, tundra, and the dark taiga
These
forest, a landscape
colossal
beautiful in a different way,
structures,
but empty of the
built
energy
from
and the giants
bone
that
and
once made the north
ivory,
a kingdom of life.
provided
The
shelter
environment does not
against
just
the
lose an animal,
unforgiving
the environment loses the
prehistoric
engine that kept the world
winds.
turning. Code of the Ice, a genetic chronicle. The history of the species is written not only in the bones buried in the permafrost, but in the invisible, spiraling library of the cell. Deep within the marrow of the frozen remains, the genetic blueprint survives, a long, twisting ladder of molecules that tells the story of divergence and adaptation. To understand the woolly titan is to read this ancient text and compare the script with that of the living relative, the Asian elephant. The two lineages share a common ancestor, a traveler that walked the earth millions of years ago, but the paths diverged, leading one toward the steaming jungles of the south, and the other toward the freezing abyss of the north.
To
The difference
walk
between the
beneath
tropical
the
dweller and the
memory
Ice Age
of the
giant is not merely
mammoth
cosmetic. The
is to
distinction is etched into the
understand
very
the
sequence of the
scale
DNA.
of these
The genome of the
ancient
mammoth is a modified
giants.
version of the elephantine code, edited by the ruthless hand of natural selection over hundreds of thousands of generations. These edits are precise, targeting specific functions necessary for survival in the cryosphere. The first and most vital alteration lies in the blood. In the warm-blooded relatives of the south, the hemoglobin, the molecule responsible for carrying oxygen, functions optimally at high body temperatures. However, in the extreme cold of the steppe, the
In
extremities
this
of the body drop
treeless
significantly in
landscape,
temperature.
wood is
For a
too
normal
precious
elephant,
to
this
burn.
cooling would cause the hemoglobin
Instead,
to hold on to the
these
oxygen too tightly,
inhabitants rely
starving
on
the tissues
dried
of the feet
peat
and the
and
trunk.
mammoth dung
The mammoth
for
possesses a
warmth.
specific mutation in the beta-globin gene. This genetic tweak alters the surface of the protein, allowing the blood to release oxygen even when the limbs are near freezing. It is a chemical antifreeze, a microscopic adaptation that keeps the tissues alive and
porous
functional
bone
at temperatures that would
tissue
turn the flesh of the
absorbs
southern
the
cousin to
thermal
stone.
energy,
The thick, shaggy coat
radiating
and the
it
heavy layer
back
of fat
to
are not
maintain a
accidents of
stable
growth, but the result of a
interior
specific gene known
temperature.
as TRPV3. In the genome of the Asian elephant, this gene is active, regulating the sensation of temperature and the growth of hair. In the mammoth, the gene carries a distinct mutation that creates a dampening effect. This genetic silence reduces the sensitivity to thermal changes, allowing the giant to withstand the biting wind without the constant signal of pain or discomfort. Furthermore, this same mutation triggers the follicle to produce the long, dense wires of the guard hairs and stimulates the body to store the massive reserves of subcutaneous fat. A single change in the code results in a cascade of physical shielding. The rhythm of life in the Arctic is different from the tropics. The sun does not rise and set in a 12-hour cycle. The high north oscillates between the endless day of the summer and the eternal night of the winter. The biological clock of the southern relative is strictly tuned to the solar cycle. The mammoth, however, carries a mutation in the PER2 gene, a component of the circadian rhythm. This alteration essentially loosens the grip of the 24-hour clock, allowing the beast to forage and function irregularly during the continuous light or the continuous dark. The metabolism is unchained from the rising sun, permitting the animal to maximize the intake of food whenever the resources are available, regardless of the time of day. Even the appearance of the herd is dictated by the roll of the genetic dice. While the popular image portrays a uniform brown giant, the genes reveal a diversity of color. The MQ1R gene, responsible for pigmentation, shows variations in the DNA recovered from the permafrost. Some individuals carried a dominant version of the gene, resulting in a dark, almost black coat. Others possessed a recessive mutation that reduced the production of eumelanin, resulting in a coat that was pale, perhaps ginger or blonde. The herd was a tapestry of shades moving against the white snow, a variation driven by the random drift of appearance. However, the genetic story has a final, tragic chapter. As the population retreated to the isolation of Wrangel Island, the gene pool began to shrink. The code, once robust and diverse, became repetitive and fractured. The analysis of the final individuals reveals a phenomenon known as genomic meltdown. The distinct lack of new genetic material forced the survivors to breed with close kin. Deleterious mutations, errors in the code that would normally be weeded out by a large population began to accumulate. The genes responsible for the sense of smell, so vital for finding food and sensing mates, lost function. The olfactory map of the world faded. A mutation affecting the structure of the hair caused the protective wool to become silky and translucent. The satin coat defect, stripping away the insulation and leaving the animal shivering in the damp wind. The male fertility genes degraded. The blueprint was crumbling from within. The extinction of the mammoth was not just a matter of hunting or climate, it was a collapse of the biological software. The majestic code, which had engineered a masterpiece of survival capable of conquering the ice, eventually succumbed to the silence of isolation.
Matted fur
The double
of the
helix,
woolly
once a
mammoth,
strong chain
provides
linking the
crucial
generations, became a frayed
insulation
thread,
against the
finally snapping
biting
under the weight
winds
of
that
accumulated
scour
errors,
the open
leaving behind
steppe.
only the fragments for the future of the
Guided
code.
by memory,
The twofold silence,
the leader
the climate
tests
and the speed.
the treacherous
The disappearance of the
ice,
giants is not a single event,
ensuring
but a
safe
complex
passage
unraveling.
for the next
A mystery debated by the
generation
inheritors of
across
the
the
earth.
vast
Two great
tundra.
forces rise as the architects of this destruction. Two shadows that lengthen across the history of the steppe. One is the invisible hand of the changing atmosphere, the other is the tangible, sharp edge of the new predator. The first theory speaks of the betrayal
For the
of the
youngest
sky.
members
The world
of the
warms.
herd,
The ice
the
sheets, which had locked
frozen
away
earth
the ocean's moisture
provides
for millennia,
endless
begin to weep.
opportunities for
The water
play,
returns to the cycle,
a
filling the
crucial
air with
part
humidity
of their
and clouds.
development.
The clear, dry atmosphere of the Pleistocene, which allowed the sun to strike the earth with precision, is replaced by a heavy, insulating blanket of fog and rain. This climatic shift triggers a war of vegetation. The mammoth steppe, that vast solar panel of high-protein grasses, relies on aridity. As the moisture increases, the ground softens. The permafrost, the solid foundation of the north, retreats downward. The dry, firm soil turns into a
The
sponge.
intelligence
The nutritious
of the
grasses
herd
drown,
is
their roots
woven
rotting
into
in
the
the foggy
silence of the plains.
In their place rises a new green
possessing
enemy, the moss and the
minds
lichen.
capable of
These plants are
holding
poor in
vast
nutrients,
maps
filled with
of
toxic
the
chemicals,
landscape.
and offer little energy to a machine as demanding as the mammoth. To eat the moss is to starve with a full belly. Worse still is the march of the trees. The warming air allows the birch and the spruce to escape the river valleys. The forest, the taiga,
Senses
expands
are
like a slow-moving army. The trees are
capable
a physical
of
barrier.
detecting a
The massive
predator
bodies of the
or
herd
a
cannot maneuver
storm
through the dense,
long
tangled
before
underbrush.
either
The line of sight is
appears on
broken.
the
The
horizon.
herd can no longer see the predator approaching.
A low
The open
rumble
communication of the plains is
originates
silenced by the
deep
wall of
within
wood,
the chest
the habitat
of the
of elements.
matriarch.
The great continuous ocean
A
of grass is
vibration
broken into
that
isolated
travels
islands,
through the
trapping the herds in
ground
pockets where the
itself.
food runs out and the genetic diversity withers.
The other
The climate does not
members of
kill
the
with a weapon.
herd
The climate
stop
kills by shrinking the
grazing
room required to
as
live.
their great
However, the second
padded
theory argues that
feet
the climate alone
detect
was not
the
enough.
tremor in
The species had
earth.
survived interglacial warm periods before. The ancestors
The
had weathered the
message is
retreat of the ice in
received.
ages past.
A
This time,
signal
the
of
warming coincided with the
reassurance.
arrival of a new
A constant
the bipedal
acoustic
hunter.
tether that
This is the
keeps
overkill
group
hypothesis.
connected.
The social
mammoths of the north are
structure
what is known as
built
naive
on
prey.
respect and
Having evolved in
experience.
isolation from this specific predator,
The
animals
eldest
possess no
female
ancestral
holds
fear of
the
the small,
knowledge
hairless figures.
necessary for
when the lion
survival.
approaches, the herd forms the defensive circle. When the human approaches, perhaps the reaction is curiosity or indifference. The hunter exploits this ignorance. The weapon is not just the spear, but the strategy. The reproduction of the giant is slow. A female carries a calf for nearly 2 years.
In this harsh,
The investment in the next generation is immense.
landscape,
The maturation
the
takes over a
hierarchy
decade.
is
The
clear.
population operates on a delicate
A
balance.
gentle
The death
shake
of a single
the
reproductive
head
female is a
arriving
catastrophic
at
loss
the
that takes
riverbed.
decades to replace.
The
The human hunters do not need to kill the entire herd. By targeting the juveniles or the pregnant mothers, the hunters sever the chain of the future. The mathematics of extinction are brutal. A kill rate slightly higher than the birth rate, sustained over centuries, leads inevitably to zero. The hunters use the landscape against the prey. Fire is used to drive the panic-stricken animals into ravines or over cliffs, a method of mass
Mammoth
slaughter that
calf
secures meat for the tribe
instinctively
and devastates
seeks
the local
the thick
population
mud,
of giants. The
creating
ivory
a
is harvested,
vital
the
barrier
bones used for
against
shelter,
the
the meat
relentless
dried for the winter.
insects of the
The
ancient
success of the human
tundra.
creates a vacuum for the mammoth. As the human population expands, fueled by the abundance of meat, the pressure on the prey increases. It is a blitzkrieg, a wave of consumption that moves across the continent, extinguishing the megafauna before the animals can adapt to the new threat. The truth
The
likely lies in the
scent
lethal synergy of both
exchange is
forces.
crucial.
The climate weakens the fortress. The warming world stresses the population, shrinking the grazing grounds and fragmenting the herds. The animals are forced into smaller and smaller refuges, concentrated near the remaining sources of water and grass. And it is there, in these final bottlenecks, that the hunter waits. The climate builds the trap, and the human springs it. The giant, fighting a war on two fronts, starving from the loss of the steppe and bleeding from the wound of the flint spirit, cannot sustain the fight. The resilience that endured the Ice Age is finally broken, leaving only the wind to sweep across the empty plains where the kings and queens of the north once roamed. The hunt, strategy, and the stone tooth. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of the predator away from the prey. This is the first weapon, the understanding of the air. The herd moves through a bottleneck in the valley, a narrow corridor flanked by steep slopes of loose scree and frozen earth. This location is not chosen by chance. The terrain has been studied,
Though
observed for
predators
seasons,
watch from
and
a
selected for the
distance,
specific
they
disadvantage
keep
it
a
offers the giant.
respectful berth.
The ground here is
The
uneven,
cost
hidden
of
beneath a
attacking
deceptively
such
smooth
a
layer of snow,
united front
concealing
is
pits and
simply
rocks that
too
threaten the footing
high.
of the massive legs.
The grazing continues.
High above, on
as
the ridgeline,
trunks
the
tear
hunters
up
wait.
great clumps
The
of
figures are
grass,
motionless, wrapped in
shaking
furs that
off
blend with the
dirt
gray and white
before
of the
placing
landscape.
the food into
The patience
mouth
displayed is
in
not
a
the patience of a
rhythmic
scavenger,
motion.
but the calculated stillness of a trap waiting to be sprung. In the hands of the lead hunter rests a tool that changed the balance of power, the atlatl. This is a simple length of wood, hooked at the end, but it acts as an artificial joint, a lever that extends the arm and multiplies the force
By
of the thread.
clearing saplings
Resting in the
and
groove of this
churning the
launcher is the
soil,
dart, a
the
long,
herd
flexible shaft
prevents
tipped
the
with a point
forest
of
from
napped flint.
encroaching on
The stone point is a
grassland.
masterpiece of lithic engineering. The edges are serrated, sharper
As
than any claw,
dusk
designed to slice through the
settles
thick
over
hide and sever the
ancient
blood vessels
plains,
beneath. The tip is
the
fluted, allowing it to be
temperature
hafted
drops.
securely to the shaft. This is not a weapon of brute force, it is a weapon of
Intimate
bleed.
and rare.
The intention is
This
not to drop
moment
the giant
captures
instantly,
the
an
deep
impossible feat
connection
against 6 tons
between
of muscle,
mother and
but to inflict a
calf.
deep, draining
The
wound that will
rhythms
weaken the core
becoming
over time.
one under
The signal is given.
moonlight.
It is not a shout, but a mimicry of a bird call, a sound that belongs to the steppe. The hunters rise. The motion is fluid. The arms swing back, the atlatl whips forward, and the darts fly. The projectiles hiss through the air, traveling faster and harder than a hand-thrown spear
The
ever could.
memory of the day.
The target is the flank of a subadult, a beast separated slightly from the protective wall of the elders. The impact is audible, A dull thud, followed by the sharp crack of the shaft breaking as the muscles of the animal contract.
Masters of a
The flint tip
world
remains
made
buried deep
for
within the
them.
flesh.
A
The giant
moment
bellows, a sound of pain
frozen
and
in the
confusion.
amber of
The herd
time.
panics. The defensive circle attempts to
The
form,
sun,
but the terrain
once
works against the group.
benevolent
The narrow
provider
walls of the valley
heat,
prevent the formation.
comes a
The chaos
distant,
separates the wounded animal
pale
further.
disc hanging
Now the second
in
phase of the hunt
sky
begins, the
bleached
pursuit.
enamel.
The hunters do not close in. The bipeds hang back, tracking the blood
The
on the snow.
wind
The
changes
endurance of the human
voice,
form is the deadliest weapon of
turning
all.
from a
The
gentle
mammoth can
whisper
sprint, can charge,
into a
can destroy
howling
trees,
shriek
but the massive
that
body generates
scours the
immense heat.
onset of
The giant
long
cannot run for
freeze.
long without
A
overheating.
climatic
The hunters,
tightening
with an
that
efficient
squeezes
bipedal
the
gaze,
life
sweat.
from
Glands that cool the
plains as
skin
the
and walk for
temperature
days.
drops to levels
pursuit is a slow,
previous to the
rhythmic pressure.
unknown.
The predator is
In
always
this
there, just on the
frozen
horizon,
wasteland,
denying the prey a moment of
every
rest.
breath is
As
a
the sun dips
struggle,
low, the wounded animal
a
slows.
visible
The blood loss is
testament
taking a
to
toll,
the
the legs are
extreme
heavy,
cold.
the breathing is labored, the hunters sense the exhaustion. The group moves in, using the landscape to cut off escape routes. Fire is brought forward. The torch, a branch wrapped in animal fat, creates a barrier of light and heat that the mammoth fears. The flame is used to herd the beast, driving the confusing mind toward a patch of ground that looks solid but is treacherous. The mire, a depression in the land where the meltwater collects and the mud is deep and clinging. The exhausted giant steps forward, a heavy foot breaks through the crust. The mud sucks at the leg. The animal struggles, but the effort only drives the limbs deeper. The weight becomes a risk. The mobility, the primary
herd
defense
moves
against the small
slower
attackers,
now.
is gone.
The energy
The hunters close the circle.
required to maintain
The silence of the stalk
body
is
heat
replaced by
is
the coordinated
immense,
noise of the kill.
and the thick
The spears are
layers of
thrust,
fat
not thrown.
begin to
The targets
dwindle.
are specific.
In
The
this
soft skin behind the knee to
harsh,
hamstring the
icy
leg,
world,
the underbelly where the hide
survival
is thinner.
depends
The edladdles are
entirely
used
on
again
the
from a safe distance to
impenetrable
drive more
shield
stone
of
points
the
into the lungs.
mammoth's dense,
The approach is clinical.
matted
There is no
coat.
frenzy. Every strike is calculated to maximize damage while minimizing
Unforgiving
risk to the hunter.
blizzard rages
The giant
across
fights.
the
The trunk
plain.
lashes out, capable of snapping a
Yet,
human spine
The
like a twig.
mammoth,
The tusks
a
sweep the air,
ghost in the
keeping the
snow.
attackers at bay. But the enemy is too small, too quick, and
with
too many.
all
The
water
hunters retreat when the
frozen
beast
solid.
surges and advance when the energy fades. It is a dance of attrition. The great strength of the mammoth is drained away, drop by drop, breath by
The
breath.
climate
Finally, the legs
shifts
give way. The
dramatically.
mountain of fur collapses into the mud.
Driven
The breathing
by
becomes
the
shallow rattles.
encroaching ice,
The hunters wait for the movement
mammoth
to cease
endures
completely.
a
Caution is
landscape
paramount. A dying giant is still lethal. Only when the eye no longer tracks the movement does the leader approach. The knife, a blade of obsidian, is drawn. The hunt is over. The technology of the stone and the lever, combined with the strategy of the pack and the fire, has toppled the monarch of the steppe. The silence returns to the valley, broken only by the wind and the work of the knives, as the energy of the giant is transferred to the tribe, ensuring survival for another moon in the kingdom of ice. Bone architecture, the houses of the dead. In the vast, treeless expanse of the east, across the plains that stretch through the river valleys of the Dnieper and the Don, the necessity of survival drives a grim but ingenious form of architecture. The wood is scarce, dwarfed and twisted by the cold, insufficient for building the structures required to withstand the winter gales. The stone is buried under meters of permafrost or hidden beneath the snow. Yet, the need for a permanent shelter against the screaming blizzard is absolute. The answer lies scattered across the landscape, the white, enduring legacy of the hunt, the remains of the Titans. The construction begins with the foundation. The builders gather the massive
A
skulls
successful
of the
hunt
mammoths. These cranes,
means
stripped of
survival
flesh and
through
bleached
the
by the
brutal
sun,
winter.
are heavy and broad. They are
But the
arranged in a
mammoth
precise
is a
circle, set deep
formidable
into the
opponent.
semi-frozen earth to provide a stable base that will not shift when the ground swells and contracts with the frost. The skulls act as the sockets of the house, the anchor points for the weight that is to follow. The walls rise from this skeletal footprint, a mesmerizing display of geometric precision. The primary building block is the mandible, the lower jaw of the giant. These bones are uniform, V-shaped, and structurally dense. The builders stack them with the care of a mason laying bricks. The arrangement is not random, it is a pattern born of aesthetics and engineering. In some sections, the mandibles are stacked in a herringbone pattern, locking together to create a wall that is thick, windproof, and insulated by the air pockets within the bone itself. In other sections, the jaws are stacked vertically, the chins facing outward, creating a textured, formidable exterior that deflects the wind. To fill the gaps and provide
The
height,
mammoth
the long bones
senses
of the
the
legs,
danger,
the femurs, and the
but
tibias
the
are
wolves
employed.
are relentless.
These pillars of calcium,
They
which once
use
supported
the
6 tons
harsh
of walking
terrain
muscle,
to their
now support the
advantage,
sanctuary of the human
moving
tribe.
like go-
The sheer volume of material required is staggering. A single dwelling, a circular hut measuring perhaps 5 meters across, incorporates the remains of nearly 100 mammoths. This is not the harvest of a single season. It is the accumulation of generations, a collection of ancestral trophies and scavenged finds that transforms the dwelling into a physical history of the relationship between the hunter and the prey. The roof is the greatest challenge, a defiance of gravity using materials that are curved and heavy. The great tusks, the ivory sweeps that once plowed the snow, are utilized as the rafters. They are fitted together at the apex, their natural curvature creating a dome shape that sheds the snow effectively. Where the tusks are not long enough, they are lashed together with rawhide or supported by central poles made of driftwood or bundled bone. Over this ivory cage, the skins of the animals are stretched, thick, heavy hides sewn together to form a watertight seal. The weight of the skins is held down by antlers and smaller bones, preventing the roof from being torn away by the storms. The entrance is often marked by a monumental archway
The isolated
formed by two
mammoth
massive tusks
turns to
meeting at the
face
top.
the tormentor.
A gateway that forces the
Its
entrance to
trunk
pass through the
lashing
membrane of
out
the
as
animal's
a
power.
deadly bludgeon.
Inside, the atmosphere is a stark
targets are
contrast to the freezing
small
void
and
outside.
quick.
The floor
A
is dug down below the
relentless
surface
attack.
level, using the Earth's
The
natural
hunters
insulation.
move as a
heart
single
burns in the center,
organism,
fueled by bone
driving
marrow
their
and dry
spears
dung,
deep
as wood is too
until
precious
the
to burn
snow
from mere heat.
becomes stained
The fire
with
casts
crimson.
dancing shadows against the walls of jawbones
Exhaustion
and skulls.
and blood
The
loss
structure breathes.
weaken the great
The porous
mammoth.
nature of the bone absorbs the
A
heat and
tragic
radiates it back,
struggle
creating a
against
thermal
the
mass that
biting,
keeps the interior livable even when the
unforgiving
world outside
cold.
plunges to lethal temperatures. These are not temporary camps. These are the first villages, the first assertions of permanence in a nomadic world. The architecture speaks of a society that is complex, organized, and capable of large-scale cooperation. The collection, transport, and assembly of tons of bone require a collective effort that transcends the immediate family unit. The House of Bone is a fortress, a temple, and a home, built from the bodies of the gods of the steppe,
In this
protecting the fragile
brutal
lives of
winter,
the hairless ones
the
within the ribcage of
mammoths
the beast.
cling to life.
The boundary between the hunter and the
Their
hunted blurs
once
here.
great
The mammoth,
numbers
even in
now
death,
reduced
continues to protect
to a
the human,
vulnerable
shielding the tribe from
few.
the eternal winter. Art and spirit, the shadow on the wall. The journey begins where the light ends. Deep within the limestone belly of the earth, far from the biting wind and the blinding white of the steppe, lies a world of eternal darkness. The air here is still, heavy with the scent of damp stone and the metallic tang of fear. A single flame, fed by animal fat and hollowed stone lamps, pushes back the shadows, casting a flickering amber glow upon the rough canvas of the cave.
As the aurora
This is the sanctuary,
dances
the womb
above
of the earth, where the
frozen
physical world
tundra,
meets the spiritual.
The mammoth
artist stands
herd
before the rock face.
endures.
The hand, calloused and stained with the red of iron oxide and the black of charcoal, reaches out to touch the cold surface. The mind seeks not merely to decorate, but to conjure. To draw the giant is to know the giant. To capture the likeness is to hold a fragment of the spirit. The pigments are crushed, mixed with saliva and fat, creating a paint that is alive.
Awakens.
The application is a ritual.
A magnetic
The fingers trace the curve of the
drawing
back, the massive
herd
hump of
toward
muscle
the
that stores the
south.
life energy. The charcoal outlines the sweeping curve of the tusks, the weapons that command the respect of the plains. Under the dancing light of the torch, the image seems to move. The uneven texture of the rock gives the painting depth. A bulge in the stone becomes the heave of a flank. A crack becomes the line of the leg.
A journey
The depiction
that
is not static.
traverses a
The intent is to bring the
landscape
beast
that
into the chamber,
defies
to summon the
living,
essence of the prey before the hunt begins.
shifting from
This
the
is sympathetic
flat
magic, a
steppe.
belief that the action performed in the dark will influence the reality in the light. By striking the painted image with a spear, the hunters ensure the success on the open tundra. The connection is absolute. The paint and the blood are one, but the reverence extends beyond the walls.
Designed for soft
In the warmth
earth,
of the bone hut,
the
while the blizzard
mammoth's
screams
pads
outside, another form
struggle
of
to
creation
find
takes place.
purchase on
The
the
hands hold a piece
slick,
of ivory, a
icy
fragment of a tusk
surface.
scavenged from a fallen elder. The
The
material is
immense
hard,
weight of the
unyielding, and
giants
beautiful.
becomes a
With a sharp
liability,
flint barring, the
where
carver
a
chips away the
stumble on
excess,
the
revealing the form
unyielding
hidden
ice
within.
can mean a
A small,
broken
portable
limb
statue
and a
emerges.
sentence
This is
of
not a mere
death.
trinket, this
The
is a
wind
totem.
on the
The
glacier
smooth, polished
is a
surface of the
physical
ivory mammoth is
force,
stroked by the thumb,
stripping
a repetitive
warmth
motion that
from
brings
the
comfort in the
thickest
face of the
fur
unknown.
as
The figure is carried in a
herd
pouch,
presses
a
on.
talisman against the cold and the hunger. The possession of the image grants the bearer a portion of the strength of the original. The toughness of the mammoth, the endurance against the storm, is transferred to the human through the medium of the art. The line between the holder and the object blurs. The human becomes the
The
mammoth,
woolly
walking in the
mammoth,
resilience of the giant.
a
The
survivor
worldview of the people is
Ice
shaped by the
Age.
presence of the
Its
giants are not seen as dumb
eyelashes
beasts, but as fellow
freeze
citizens
shut.
of the steppe, perhaps
Forth
even as the elders of the world. The The belief system
There
is
is
woven
no
around the cycle
shelter
of the life
here.
that the mammoth provides.
Only
The Earth Mother is often envisioned in the vast, rounded forms of the animals. When a kill is made, the ritual is strict.
Hunger
The spirit
is
of
a
the animal must
constant
be appeased.
companion.
The
as
skull is not left to
reserves
rot in
of
the mud,
fat
but is
are
placed high,
gone, and the
facing the
skin
rising sun,
hangs
allowing the
looser
soul
on
to return to the
frame,
sky to
showing
regrow.
ribs beneath
The shaman,
matted
the keeper
hair.
of the mysteries,
The
wears the
trunk
mask of the skull.
searches
The
ceaselessly,
heavy bone rests upon the human
scouring
shoulders,
the
transforming the
ice
silhouette.
for lichens
In the flickering
or
firelight
moths,
of the camp, the shaman
anything
dances,
that
mimicking
might
the heavy
offer
rhythmic
a
tread of the
calorie
herd.
of energy.
The drum beats, a low, thundering pulse that resonates in the chest, simulating the sound of their migration. The voice rises in a chant, a language of grunts and rumbles that attempts to bridge the gap between the species. The trance takes hold.
The
The
herd
human
shares
consciousness
these
recedes,
small
replaced by the vision of the
bounties.
world through the eyes
Never
of the giant,
enough
a
to
world
sate
of
the
smell,
hunger,
of vibration,
but
of ancient
enough
memory.
to keep the
The
muscles
art and the
moving
belief are the
for
threads that
another
bind the human
hour.
to the environment. The mammoth is the pillar of the physical world, providing the food and the shelter, and the pillar of the spiritual world, providing the meaning and the connection to the forces of nature. Even as the climate shifts and the numbers of the giants dwindle, the images remain. The red ochre fades,
It
but
is
does not
here
disappear.
in the
The
shadows
ivory statues
that
are passed down,
danger
the meaning changing,
multiplies.
but the power remaining.
As the
The cave walls hold the memory of the
saber-toothed
thundering
cat,
hooves long after
a
the
creep-
steppe has fallen silent, a testament to a time when the human soul and the spirit of the mammoth walked the same frozen path. The body as harvest, survival in the heart of ice. The wind that scours the steppe in the depths of winter carries a temperature that halts the breath in the throat. The human frame, frail and hairless, is an anomaly in this frozen world. The skin freezes within minutes of exposure. The internal heat dissipates rapidly into the void. Survival here is an impossibility for the naked. The existence of the tribe depends entirely on the assimilation of the giant. The mammoth is not merely prey, the mammoth is the harvest, the mine, and the shield. To kill one of the titans is to secure the resources of life for an entire season. The primary resource is the flesh. The body of a single adult yields tons of dark, nutrient-dense meat. In a landscape where the vegetation is buried under ice, the mammoth represents a concentrated battery of solar energy gathered over decades of grazing. The tribe descends upon the carcass with stone blades. The butchery is a race against the cold and the scavengers. The meat is stripped from the massive bones in great slabs. The cold, usually the enemy, now becomes the ally. The surplus flesh is buried in pits dug into the permafrost, nature's own preservation chamber. This frozen cache ensures that the gnawing ache of hunger is held at bay during the long moons when the blizzard blinds the world and hunting is impossible.
display of
The
dominance
consumption of this meat
rarely
provides the immense
seen
caloric
on the
intake
open
required to keep the
tundra.
human metabolism running. The body burns energy furiously just to maintain a core temperature. The fat, the thick white layer of blubber that insulates the giant, becomes the fuel for the human furnace. The hunters consume the fat raw or rendered, the lipids providing the slow, burning energy that sustains the body through the long nights. Without this high-energy fuel, the human body would consume itself, withering away in the Arctic chill. But the dependence extends beyond the stomach. The darkness of the winter is absolute, stretching for weeks without the sun rising above the horizon. The wood is scarce, buried, or stunted. The fat of the mammoth becomes the light. The suet is placed in hollowed stones with wicks made of dried moss. The flame produced is steady and hot. These stone lamps push back the terrifying dark of the cave or the hut, allowing the work of the tribe to continue. The smoke is heavy and greasy, coating the lungs, but the light is
The
civilization.
swift,
The fat allows the
freezing
sewing of
currents
clothes, the repair of
present the
tools, and the
hardest
telling of stories to
trials
continue
for
while the storm
giants
rages outside.
as they
The
navigate
height of the giant
this
is the barrier between the
treacherous
human
crossing.
and the frost. The skin is incredibly thick, tough, and heavy. To process such a
with the
material requires the
display
strength
of
of the whole
immense
group.
strength.
The hide is scraped clean of
The
flesh and fat,
matriarch
then treated with the brains of the animal to
shatters the
soften the
frozen
leather. Once cured, the
Forged.
skin becomes the walls of the dwelling, the roof that sheds the snow. More importantly,
As
the
the
hide becomes
climate
the second skin of the human.
warms, the
The leather is
jagged
fashioned into heavy
peaks
boots
yield
lined with dried grass for insulation,
hills.
allowing the feet to walk on the ice without freezing. The tunics and leggings, sewn with the sinew of the beast, create a microclimate around the human body. The wind that cuts through fur cannot penetrate the leather of the mammoth. The utilization is total. The sinew, the strong fibers that connected the muscles to the bone, is dried and pounded into thread. This thread is the strongest cordage available, capable of holding the heavy skins together against the tearing force of the gale. The intestines are cleaned and dried to make waterproof containers for carrying water or melted snow. The bladder becomes a pouch. The hair, combed from the hide, is woven into rope or used to stuff the gaps in the clothing to trap more heat. Even the bones, after the marrow has been sucked out to feed the children, serve a
For
purpose
these
beyond construction.
titans of the
The
tundra,
smaller fragments are
the
burned.
first
In a
taste
treeless
of
landscape,
the fresh
bone is a
spring
fuel
grass
source.
is a
The fire built from the
sensory
remains of the giant
explosion.
burns hot and long, a final gift of warmth released from the skeleton. The ribs become sledge runners for transporting the meat. The shoulder blades become shovels for clearing the snow. The relationship is parasitic in the most desperate sense, yet deeply respectful.
Plays
The human
in
lives inside the
shallow
skin of the
mud,
mammoth, eats the
the
flesh of the
terror
mammoth,
of
burns
the
the fat of the
canyon,
mammoth, and hides behind the
fading
bones
into
of the
the
mammoth.
resilience.
The boundary
of
between the two
youth.
species dissolves in the struggle for existence.
Winter
In the harsh arithmetic
is
of the Ice
behind
Age,
them now.
the life of the tribe is bought with the death of the giant.
Ahead
The human
lies
survives
the
only by
promise
becoming,
of the
in part,
summer
the creature
grazing
that was hunted.
lands.
The warmth that flows through the veins of the tribe is the borrowed warmth of the Titan, a theft of fire that allows the fragile biped to
cycle
endure the era of the
continues.
eternal winter. The science
Driven
of
by the
resurrection,
will to
the laboratory,
survive.
and the helix. The setting shifts from the howling winds of the Pleistocene to the absolute stillness of a sterile room. The air here is filtered, scrubbed of all dust and microscopic life, maintained at a constant, cool temperature. Under the harsh glare of artificial lights,
Once
the remnant of
measured
the
in
giant lies
months
upon a
of
stainless steel
travel,
table. This is not a
the
creature of flesh and
land
blood
is now
anymore, but a
small
specimen, a
and
frozen archive of
finite.
biological data. The journey from the permafrost to the petri dish begins with a drill.
The
The
ocean,
extraction of the code is a delicate violence.
grey and restless.
The scientist approaches the sample, a
surrounds
fragment of bone
this
or a patch of
final
preserved skin
refuge.
found deep within the
a
Siberian ice.
barrier.
The
The material
connection
is
to
hard
the
as stone,
mainland
the
is
drill whirs to
severed,
life, a high-pitched
leaving the
whine that pierces
giants
the silence.
alone as
The bit pours into the
castaways
ancient
on a
tissue,
fragment of
creating a
land
fine dust.
drifting
This
in
powder
the
holds the
Arctic
secret.
Sea.
Inside
The
these
era
microscopic
of the
granules,
Great
the cells of the mammoth have been
Migration
entombed
is
for
a
thousands of
genetic
years.
memory.
The cold has acted as a guardian,
ghost
slowing down the
haunting
decay,
the
but the cold could not
instincts
stop
of the
time completely.
survivors.
The powder is collected
There
and
is
submerged in a chemical
nowhere
bed.
left
The
to
liquid
walk.
dissolves the calcium and the fats,
As
stripping
the
away the
path
physical structure to reveal the molecular
Always
core.
ends
The goal
at
is the nucleus
crashing
of the cell.
waves.
However, the reality is a shattered puzzle. The DNA, once a long, continuous
The
ladder of
climate,
billions of rungs,
too,
has been broken by
betrayed
cosmic
the
radiation
herd.
and entropy. The helix is
As the
snapped into millions of
cold,
tiny
dry
fragments,
air
a library
that
where the books have been
sustained
shredded
the-
into confetti. The challenge is not merely finding the DNA, but making sense of the chaos. The solution lies in the machine. The sequencer sits on the bench, a sleek box of plastic and silicon. The chemical soup containing the ancient fragments is fed into the device. Inside, lasers and sensors read the sequence of the molecules, translating the biological matter into a digital stream of ones and zeros. The computer screen fills with lines of code, a chaotic jumble of letters, A, C, G, T. This is the ghost of the mammoth, digitized. To reconstruct the broken manual, a reference is needed. The genome of the Asian elephant, the closest living relative, serves as the cover image for the puzzle. The computer aligns the fragments of the mammoth DNA against the elephant template. Slowly, a picture emerges. The gaps are identified. The differences are highlighted.
The towering
The specific
height
genes
of
that
its
coded for the thick hair,
ancestors
the
has
subcutaneous
faded,
fat, and the freeze-resistant blood are
replaced
located.
by a sturdier
The blueprint of the Ice Age
frame
giant is
built
mapped out,
to conserve
contrasting sharply with the
energy.
blueprint of the tropical cousin. But reading the code is only the first step.
Warned
The true
by
alchemy
the
occurs with the editing.
relentless humid
The tool for this
wind and
resurrection is a molecular
parasites.
machine known as
The mammoth's
CRISPR-Cas9.
patchy
This
coat
technology acts as a pair
reveals
of biological
struggle for
scissors, guided by a precise GPS system. The scientist prepares a culture of living cells taken from an Asian elephant. These cells are the canvas. The CRISPR complex is introduced into the fluid. The mechanism is elegant and ruthless. The guide RNA, programmed
But
with
the
the specific
greatest
sequence of the mammoth
toll
gene,
is
leads the
silent.
Cas9 enzyme through the vast nucleus of the
As
elephant
the
cell.
bloodline
The complex
is
searches for the matching
failing.
sequence in the elephant DNA. When the target is found, the scissors cut. The double helix is severed at the precise location where the modification is needed. This is the moment of substitution. The laboratory provides a repair template, a synthetic piece of DNA synthesized to match the mammoth sequence.
Claimed by
The cell,
sickness
sensing the damage,
before the
attempts to
first
repair the cut.
winter,
In the process, the cell
highlighting
grabs the
that
provided template,
genetic pool
knitting the mammoth
is a
gene into the elephant
stagnant
chromosome.
pond.
The instruction for hairlessness is replaced by the instruction for wool. The command
The
for cold sensitivity is
vitality that
overwritten by the
once
command for
allowed
cold
the
resistance.
species to
The process is
conquer
repeated
continents
thousands of times
is
across thousands of
eroding
genes.
from within.
The nucleus of the elephant cell is slowly transformed. It is a biological ship of Theseus, replacing the timber of the tropics with the iron of the north. The cell divides. The daughter cells carry the new instructions. In the nutrient-rich broth of the laboratory, a tissue begins to grow that has not existed for 4 millennia. This is not cloning in the traditional sense. The nucleus is not a perfect copy of a specific ancient individual, but a chimera, a hybrid engineered to function like the lost titan. The ultimate goal lies beyond the petri dish. The edited nucleus must be placed into an egg, and that egg must be sparked into life. The concept of an artificial womb is the final frontier, a fluid-filled chamber that mimics the environment of the uterus, nurturing the growing embryo without risking the life of a surrogate elephant mother.
Not in
The science stands at the precipice of creation.
losses.
The drill, the sequencer, and the gene editor have bridged the gap of extinction. The code that was silenced by the spear and the climate has been spoken again. In the hum of the cooling fans and the quiet bubbling of the chemical beakers, the essence of the mammoth is no longer a memory buried in the ice, but a living potential waiting to be born. The resurrection is not a magic spell, but a sequence of chemical reactions, a triumph of intellect over the finality of death. The resurrection scenario. The first
Some
breath of a new
succumb
epoch.
to the hunger,
The sterile hum of the laboratory
teeth
fades,
worn
replaced by
down
the
to
humid,
the
earthy
gums,
scent of a specialized sanctuary.
unable to grind
The focus shifts to
tough,
the vessel of this
woody
ambitious
shrubs.
experiment, the surrogate. The Asian elephant stands in a
Others
paddock designed for
simply
comfort and
lie
observation.
down and
This
do
creature
not
is the closest living
rise.
relative, the biological
The
cousin
spirit
chosen to bridge the gap of
exhausted
4,000
by
years.
the struggle.
But the burden carried within the womb is
A
unlike any that has
majestic
existed
sight,
in the modern world.
yet a melancholic
The embryo
one.
implanted 22 months ago was not
These
the creation of
giants
natural
face
selection,
a world that
but a product
no
of
longer
genetic
has a
architecture,
place
a
for
hybrid
them
sequence
as
spliced
the
together
ice
to resurrect the traits of
retreats.
the ice
The
giants.
circle
The
of
gestation period is a
defense,
marathon of biology.
once
For nearly 2
unbreakable,
years, the surrogate nurtures the growing life.
becomes
The scientists watch
alive.
from behind reinforced glass, monitoring the hormone levels and the fetal heart rate on glowing screens. The data streams reveal a divergence from the norm. The fetus demands more energy than a typical calf. The metabolic fires of the passenger are stoked high, a genetic imperative to build the internal furnace required for the Arctic. The surrogate consumes vast quantities of nutrient-rich feed, the body working overtime to supply the calcium for the heavy bones and the lipids for the developing fat layers. Inside the amniotic sac, the transformation is visible on the
They are
ultrasound.
the last
Where a tropical
of the
calf would be smooth-skinned,
titans,
this fetus is covered in a fine,
holding the
dense down.
memory of a
The ears
world
do not
that
unfurl
has
into large
already
fans. Instead,
moved
the
on.
cartilage remains compact, pinned close to the skull.
The
The genetic
woolly
instruction to
mammoth,
conserve heat is active
a
long before the
relic
first
of the
breath is
Ice
taken.
Age.
The passenger is preparing for a winter that does not exist in the sanctuary, building a body for the steppe while floating in the warmth of the womb. The day of the arrival is marked by a shift in the atmosphere. The surrogate becomes restless. The heavy body faces the sand of the enclosure. The trunk swings nervously, testing the air. The low-frequency rumbles of distress vibrate through the floor. The labor begins. The contractions are powerful, rippling through the massive flame. The biology of the birth is a universal struggle, a violent expulsion of life from the dark into the light. The scientists wait, breathless, hands hovering over emergency kits.
Now
But the rule is
truly
non-interference
alone.
unless the life of the mother is at risk. The struggle intensifies. The surrogate groans, a sound of deep physical exertion.
Against the
The hips
dramatic
widen. The amniotic
backdrop
sac
of the
appears, a
tundra
shimmering bubble of
sunset,
fluid. With a final
the
heaving push,
mammoth
the calf is expelled.
endures.
The
Its
newborn
thick
drops onto the soft
coat
sand with a wet thud, the sac rupturing upon impact.
As
The fluid
the
washes
sun
away,
sets,
revealing the creature to the air. For a
casting
moment, there is absolute
final
stillness.
weak
The newborn lies in a
light
heap,
over
a
the
tangle of wet limbs
island
and trunk.
that served
Then the chest heaves. The first breath is drawn, a sharp, gasping intake of oxygen. The lungs, encoded to extract oxygen from thin, freezing air, inflate for the first time in the thick atmosphere of the modern day. The creature shakes the head, the eyes open, blinking against the artificial twilight. The appearance of the calf is a shock to the familiar order. The skin is not the gray, wrinkled hide of the elephant. The body is covered in a coat of thick,
Finally.
reddish-brown fuzz, the precursor to the
There
shaggy
is
wool of the adult.
only
The tail is
one.
short, a mere flap. The head is high and domed, housing the complex sinus cavities designed to warm the polar air. The ears are tiny, almost hidden in the fur. This is an animal designed for the blizzard, lying on the straw of a climate-controlled room. The surrogate turns. The maternal instinct, ancient and overriding, kicks in. The large adult approaches the strange, small bundle. The trunk reaches out, the sensitive tip sniffing the newborn. The scent is familiar yet alien. It carries the smell of the elephant, but underneath there is the musk of the mammoth, the scent of the lanolin oil that
The
waterproofs the wool.
creature is old.
The surrogate pauses.
The
The tension in the
skin
observation room is
hanging in
palpable.
heavy
Will the modern mother
folds
accept the
around
ancient
the
child?
neck and
The
flanks.
hesitation breaks. The surrogate touches the calf gently, nudging the small body. The rumble of greeting begins, a soft, comforting vibration. The acceptance is sealed. The mother begins to clean the newborn, using the trunk to blow dust over the wet fur, drying the coat. The calf struggles to stand. The legs are thick and sturdy. The instinct to rise is immediate. After several failed attempts, the hybrid finds the balance. The creature stands, wobbling on the pillar like legs.
The acoustic world.
The calf seeks the milk. The mouth finds the source, and the feeding begins. The milk of the Asian elephant flows into the system. The biological loop is closed. The experiment has succeeded. In the quiet of the sanctuary, the shadow of the Ice Age has returned. The creature nursing in the straw is the first of a new line, a living artifact of a lost world. The silence of extinction, which held the steppe for
The
millennia,
sound
is broken by the
vibrates
soft,
through the
high-pitched trumpet
chest,
of the calf.
a frequency
The woolly titan
that
walks
can
the earth once
travel
more,
for
a
miles.
ghost made flesh by the will of the human and the machinery of the cell. Pleistocene Park, the return of the North.
It
The
is
journey
a
of the resurrected
question
titan does not end in the
asked
nursery of the laboratory.
of the empty
The destination
air.
is the far north, a remote expanse of land in Siberia where the earth is currently frozen. The ground here,
Is
known as
there
permafrost,
another?
is a frozen vault that has held the carbon of millennia locked within the soil. However, the vault is cracking. The atmosphere warms and the land softens. The ancient ice melts, turning the firm steppe into a weeping bog. Beneath the mud, the organic matter begins to rot, releasing plumes of methane, a greenhouse gas with a potency far exceeding that of carbon dioxide. The silence of the tundra is broken by the bubbling of this escaping gas, a signal of planetary fever. To combat this invisible enemy, a radical plan is enacted on the banks of the Kolyma River. The concept is to turn back the ecological clock. The modern mossy tundra and the dark taiga forest are not the natural state of this land. These are the symptoms of an ecosystem missing the keystone. The project, known as Pleistocene Park, aims to restore the Mammoth steppe, transforming the landscape from a heat-absorbing
No
wetland back into a cold, dry, and reflective
rumble.
grassland. The tool for this geoengineering is not a machine, but the herd. The mechanism of restoration relies on the physical presence of the animals.
Realization is
In the current
not
winter,
an
the deep, soft
intellectual
snow
thought,
acts as a thick down
but
blanket,
a
trapping
crushing
the heat of the earth and
physical
preventing the
weight.
freezing air of the atmosphere from reaching the soil. The ground remains dangerously warm beneath this insulation. The reintroduction of large herbivores changes the physics of the season. The horses, the bison, and the muskoxen do not float over the snow. The creatures plow through the drifts. The heavy hooves trample the powder, compacting the snow into a dense, thin layer of ice. This compacted surface loses the insulating power. The barrier is removed. The bitter cold of the Arctic winter, reaching temperatures of minus 40 degrees, is allowed to penetrate deep into the ground. The soil freezes harder and deeper than before. The permafrost is reinforced, locking the carbon and the methane away once again. The presence of the animals acts as a refrigeration unit for the landscape. Furthermore, the appetite of the grazers alters the surface of the earth.
Visits the sheltered
The dark spruce and larch trees, which absorb the heat
where
of the sun, are the enemies of the cooling process. The forest traps heat. The mammoth is the solution to the forest.
weighing up
The
to
resurrected
6
giants are introduced to the park
tons.
not merely
The
as inhabitants,
mammoth
but as heavy
dominates
machinery.
this
The
landscape,
massive bodies knock down the
but
trees,
even
clearing the
the
scrub and opening the
largest
canopy.
giant
The
must
sunlight
put
reaches the
the
ground,
memory
stimulating the
of
growth of the
others
light-colored
is
grasses.
etched into
These
the
grasses have a high
landscape,
albedo effect.
sensed
Pale stalks
by
reflect the sunlight back into
survivor in
space
the
rather than
scent
absorbing
of
the energy
old
as heat.
bones.
The transformation is total. The dark, heat-trapping forest is replaced by a light, heat-reflecting pasture. The transpiration of the grasses keeps the soil dry. The cycle of the ecosystem is rebooted. The land becomes a carbon sink, absorbing the emissions of the world
hunger
rather than
is
adding
a
to the burden.
dull ache.
The arrival of the woolly titan marks the completion of the
constant
vision.
companion
The elephants of the north patrol
that
the
no
boundaries of the
longer
park, the
drives
tusks
the
clearing the snow,
urgency
the
of
weight
the
shaking the
hunt.
earth. The ecosystem,
old
broken
one
since the end of the Ice
eats
Age, clicks back into
mechanically,
alignment. The restoration of the
stripping
species
bark
leads to the restoration
from
of the clan.
dwarf willows,
The giants do not just live in the park,
chewing
the giants
slowly.
save the park, and by extension, contribute to the cooling of the planet. The loop is
The
closed.
energy
The
required
creature
to
that died
move
out
the
as the world
massive
warmed
bulk
returns to ensure
becomes
the
a
world
burden.
does not warm further. The thundering of the feet on the frozen ground is the sound of the earth healing itself, a wild solution
The
to a modern
steps
crisis
grow
played out on the
shorter.
vast, windswept stage of the
The
Siberian frontier.
pauses grow longer.
The frozen frontier, the race for the resurrected past. The narrative shifts now to the present tense, to a world defined not by ice ages,
The
but by
world
technology
is
and the relentless
becoming
pursuit of what was
blurred.
lost. The
The
setting is the high
edges of
Arctic, a
vision
landscape of blinding white
soften
oceans
as
and
the
jagged
strength
coastlines locked in sea
fades.
ice. The silence
The
of this
end
northern
does
expanse
not
is broken
come
by the
with
roar of turboprop
violence.
engines. A heavy
There are
transport
no
aircraft, painted in
predators
high
here
visibility
to
orange against
challenge
the
the
monochrome horizon,
monarch.
descends toward a temporary airstrip carved out of a frozen lake. The tires touch down with a screech, kicking up plumes of powder snow. From the rear ramp of the aircraft, an expedition team emerges. The figures are indistinguishable from one another, bulky silhouettes wrapped in multi-layered thermal suits, faces hidden behind reflective goggles and neoprene masks. The breath of the group rises in synchronized clouds of vapor. This is not a hunt for meat. This is a hunt for data, for the genetic gold buried beneath the surface.
The belly
The equipment,
touches the
unloaded,
earth.
is cutting edge. Ground-penetrating
The
radar
tusks
sleds, thermal imaging
rest
drones,
upon
hydraulic
the
core
moss.
drills, and portable steam generators. The base camp is established quickly, a cluster of
For a
geodesic
long
domes engineered to
time,
withstand winds
The
that can strip
creature
flesh from
simply
bone.
breathes.
The center of operations is the
The
command tent,
chest
filled with monitors
rises
displaying
and
satellite feeds and
falls.
geological
A
scans.
slowing
The target area
rhythm.
has been identified through years of orbital surveillance, a section
The
of collapsing
woolly
coastal
mammoth,
permafrost where the thawing Earth is
a
vomiting out
relic
the
of
secrets
the
of the
Ice
Pleistocene.
Age.
The search begins with the radar
Surveys
sled.
its frosty
The technicians drag the
domain.
equipment across the uneven terrain in parallel lines. The radar waves penetrate
Perhaps
the ground, bouncing back
in the
signals that are
fading
translated into a visual map on
synapses
the
of the
tablets held by the lead
ancient
surveyors.
brain,
The subsurface is a
the
chaotic
mist
jumble of ice wedges,
clears,
frozen silt,
and
and
the
ancient rock. But amidst the noise, the technology seeks a specific density, a shape that does not belong to geology. A signal is found. A large, dense anomaly is detected 10 meters beneath the surface near a riverbank that is actively eroding into the
the
sea.
island remains.
The dimensions suggest something massive. The order
The
is given to
birds
mobilize the excavation.
continue to cry
This is not
out
archaeology with
over
brushes
the
and trowels.
cliffs.
This is industrial surgery
But-
on the planet's frozen skin. The excavation site becomes a hive of activity under the 24-hour daylight of the Arctic summer. The primary tool is hot water, high-pressure hoses fed by boilers burning diesel fuel, blast jets of near-boiling water into the permafrost. The ice turns to slurry instantly. The smell of the melt is distinct, an earthy, pungent odor of rotting vegetation and ancient mud that has not touched the air for 40 millennia. Large pumps suck the slurry out of the pit, discharging the black water onto the tundra. As the pit deepens, the workers switch to more precise tools. Steam lances are used to melt the ice around the object carefully. The work is slow and methodical. A sudden change in temperature or a careless strike with a pickaxe could shatter the frozen tissue. The first sign of success is not bone, but hair. Thick, matted strands of reddish-brown wool begin to emerge from the gray wall of ice. A ripple of activity moves through the team. The proximity sensors are adjusted. The cameras record every second of the movement. Slowly, a form takes shape in the ice wall. It is a partially exposed carcass of a juvenile mammoth, preserved in startling detail by a flash freeze event thousands of years ago. The skin is intact. The trunk is curled defensively near the chest. The small tusks are perfect ivory, crescents against the dark soil. This is a pristine specimen, a biological time capsule containing blood, tissue, and an intact genome. However, this expedition is not operating in a vacuum. The high Arctic is a contested zone, a chessboard where nations and mega corporations vie for resources and prestige. The discovery does not go unnoticed. On the horizon, barely visible against the glare of the ice cap, a surveillance drone belonging to a rival faction circles silently. The high-altitude camera captures the activity in the pit, transmitting the coordinates to a secure server thousands of miles away. Inside the command tent of the excavation team, the communication officer notices interference on the encrypted channels. Data packets are being intercepted. A shadow operation is tracking the progress. The tension at the site shifts from scientific excitement to paranoia. The perimeter guards are doubled. The movements of the crew become sharper, faster. Sabotage is a constant threat. During a shift change, a fuel line to the main water pump is found severed, cut clean and delivered. The backup generator is brought online immediately, but the message is clear: the team is not alone, and the competitors are willing to disrupt the extraction. The prize buried in the ice is considered intellectual property by some, a national treasure by others,
But
and a
what
ticket
the
to
great
untold profits
beast
by
uncovers
biotechnological
here
firms.
is no mere
The race is no longer
trinket.
just against the melting ice,
This
but against
polished
time and opposing
stone
forces.
suggests
The decision is made to
dawn of
extract the
human
specimen in a single
artistry.
block. Cutting the carcass free from the ice
A
matrix is too risky
repetitive
for the field.
motion,
The plan is to carve out a massive cube of permafrost
A
containing the
comfort
mammoth and airlift
sought
the entire structure.
the face
The
of
steam
the
lances are used to
unknown.
cut deep trenches around the carcass. Steel cables and reinforced netting are lowered into the pit and secured around the base of the ice block. The extraction day arrives with deteriorating weather. A heavy fog rolls in from the Arctic Ocean, reducing visibility. The sound of heavy-lift helicopters approaches, the rotors beating the humid air. The aircraft hover over the site, dropping heavy-duty lifting hooks. The ground crew scrambles to attach the rigging to the ice block. The tension peaks as the helicopters begin to take the strain. The engines scream in protest. The cables pull taut, vibrating with the tension. Slowly, with a groaning sound of ice shearing against ice, the multi-ton block begins to rise from the pit. The dark shape of the Mammoth, encased in its translucent tomb, hangs suspended between the earth and the sky. Just as the cargo clears the rim of the excavation, the radar operator in the command tent shouts a warning. Fast-moving aerial contacts are inbound from the east. No transponder signals. The rival faction is making a move to intercept the cargo. The lead pilot of the transport helicopters pushes the throttles to maximum. The aircraft banks sharply, turning south toward the extraction corridor, the heavy prize swinging beneath the fuselages. The ground team rapidly packs sensitive equipment, abandoning the rest, preparing for an emergency evacuation by a secondary aircraft. The chase is on across the frozen archipelago. The transport helicopters fly low, hugging the terrain to avoid radar detection, the precious frozen cargo destined for a high-security laboratory far from this desolate wilderness. The discovery in the ice has triggered a cold war of science, a conflict fought in the shadows for control over the building blocks of life itself. The ancient giant, once master of the steppe, has now become the ultimate pawn in the modern game of power and biological ambition. The future of the past hangs by steel cables above the Arctic Sea, flying toward an uncertain resurrection. The genetic memory, the final sunset. The sequence of nucleotides holds more than just the instructions for hair color or blood type. Buried within the spiral of the ancient DNA, extracted from the marrow of the frozen sleeper, lies a sensory record of the final hours. This is not a diary written in ink, but a biological echo burned into the cells by adrenaline and cortisol. The data reconstruction allows the observer to witness the end not from the outside, but through the nervous system of the victim. The memory begins with a sensation of urgency. The air is crisp, carrying the metallic taste of approaching snow, but the ground is raw. The season is turning, yet the earth remains soft in places, a deceptive slush hidden beneath a thin crust of rime. The herd is moving fast, a dark gray line against the white horizon. The juvenile is lagging, the legs, heavy with the fatigue of a long migration, struggle to keep the pace. The hunger is a sharp pain in the belly. The grazing has been poor, the grass is buried under early drifts. Then the scent arrives. It is the smell of smoke and cured leather, the olfactory signature of the bipedal pack. The panic spikes in the blood. The heart rate accelerates, thundering against the ribs like a trapped bird. The pursuers are visible now, small, upright figures moving with a terrifying, rhythmic endurance. The hunters do not run with speed, the hunters run with purpose. The primitive weapons, the stone-tipped spears, are held ready. The juvenile turns, seeking the safety of the riverbed. The water is usually a refuge, a place where the massive bulk of the mammoth provides an advantage over the small, swimming pursuers. The slope leading down to the water is steep, covered in loose shale and slick mud. The descent is uncontrolled. The heavy feet slide, carving deep furrows into the clay.
lapse
The momentum
reveals
builds.
the dramatic
creature crashes through the
warming
brush,
of the tundra.
the willows snapping like dry bones
The
against
woolly
the chest.
mammoth
At the bottom of the
struggles
ravine, the
as
trap
its
waits.
icy world
The river is not open
melts
water,
away.
nor is the surface solid ice. It is a slurry, thick, semi-frozen mire created by a sudden thaw and a subsequent freeze. The appearance is solid, a white sheet stretching to the other side. The juvenile steps out, driven by the fear of the stinging darts flying from the ridge above. The first step holds. The second step cracks the surface. The third step plunges into the abyss. The ice gives way with a sickening crunch. The front legs drop into the freezing slurry. The shock of the cold is instantaneous, a paralysis that grips the muscles. The mud beneath is thixotropic, a quicksand of silt and ice crystals that thickens when agitated. The more the beast struggles, the harder the earth grips. The panic turns into a frenzy. The trunk lashes out, grabbing at the jagged edge of the broken ice, seeking leverage. But the ice crumbles. The weight of the body pulls the creature down. The hind legs slip from the bank, and the giant slides fully into the mire. The hunters arrive at the edge of the pit. The figures stop. The prey is trapped, but the prize is lost. The mud is too deep. The danger of sinking too great for the
A
humans to
marvel
approach.
of
The spears are lowered.
de-extinction.
The hunt
The
ends not with a
mammoth
kill, but with a
thrives in
witness.
this carefully
The humans watch for a
controlled
moment,
ecosystem.
the breath rising in clouds
A living
before turning back to the
echo
high
of
ground,
the Ice
leaving the valley to
Age.
the silence. The struggle in the pit continues. The mud presses against the chest, compressing the lungs. Each breath becomes a battle against the weight of the earth. The cold begins to seep through the skin, past the fat, chilling the core. The adrenaline fades, replaced by a creeping lethargy. The movements slow. The trunk rests on the surface of the sludge, the tip curling to keep the nostrils above the mire. The light begins to fail. The short Arctic day surrenders to the twilight.
Encased
The temperature
within
plummets.
the ancient
The slurry around the body
permafrost,
begins to harden.
this
The trap turns into a
high-tech
tomb.
drill
The mud
begins
freezes,
the
locking the
delicate
limbs in place.
extraction.
The biting wind creates a shroud of
Bridging the
snow
gap.
over the exposed head. The sensation of pain dulls into a distant numbness. The biological alarm bells ring, quieter and quieter. The memory records the final image. The pale moon rising over the ridge, the stars emerging in the violet sky, distinct and cold. The breathing slows to a shallow rhythm. The heartbeat, the drum that has driven the life through the vast body, skips a beat, then another. The darkness of the deep sleep closes in. The consciousness fades, not into death, but into suspension. The ice seals the moment perfectly. The fear, the cold, and the last vision of the winter sky are locked
To
away in the cells,
understand the
waiting
past,
for the drill and the
we
sequencer
must
to unlock
dig
the story
deep
40,000
into the
years later.
permafrost,
The chapter closes,
retrieving
leaving the
core
frozen form
samples
perfectly
that hold
preserved in the embrace of the
secrets
permafrost.
frozen in time.
A statue of flesh waiting for the future. The message. The bridge across the eons. The glass wall of the observation enclosure stands as a transparent barrier between two epochs. On one side stands the human, the architect of the new world, draped in the synthetic fabrics of the modern age. On the other side stands the result of the architecture, the young mammoth, a fuzzy, dark silhouette against the artificial white of the containment zone. The two beings lock eyes.
As the giants
In that exchange of
roamed
gazes,
the
the
ancient
thousands of
tundra,
years that separate the
the
species
collected
evaporate.
sample begins
This is not merely a
its
scientific
soft,
triumph.
bubbling
It is a confrontation
reaction
with
in
deep
the
time.
chemical bath.
The existence of this resurrected creature serves as a living mirror. The mammoth is a testament to the endurance of biology, to the incredible complexity of the code that can survive the deep freeze of millennia. But the animal is also a warning, a physical manifestation of a shadow that looms over the present. The giant fell not because of a lack of strength, but because the world changed faster than the biology could adapt. The climate shifted, the vegetation withered, and the pressure from a new, intelligent predator tipped the balance. The tragedy of the Pleistocene is playing out again, but this time the stage is global, and the stakes include the very civilization that brought the giant back to life. The permafrost that held the ancestors of this calf is melting. The frozen vault, which kept the secrets of the past safe for 40,000 years, is failing. As the ice turns to water, the land collapses, releasing the carbon and the methane that accelerate the warming cycle. The resurrection of the mammoth is a desperate attempt to plug the leak, to use the ancient engineer to fix the modern machine. It is a paradox. The human uses the highest technology to restore the most primitive ecosystem, admitting that the natural balance engineered by the giants was superior to the artificial balance created by the machine. The fragility of life is exposed in this interaction. The mammoth was the master of the steppe, a fortress of muscle and bone that seemed invincible. Yet, the species vanished. The dominance was an illusion. The human, currently the master of the biosphere, stands on equally precarious ground. The technology that spliced the genes and built the artificial womb is powerful, but it is brittle compared to the shifting forces of the atmosphere and the ocean. The fate of the woolly titan is a reminder that no species is too large to fail, no civilization too advanced to collapse when the foundation of the environment is removed. The connection extends beyond the physical. The ghost in the gene speaks of a time when the human and the animal were intimate partners in the dance of survival. The ancestors survived the winter by borrowing the warmth of the mammoth. The modern descendants survived the coming heat by trying to borrow the ecological function of the mammoth. The dependency has not ended, it has only changed form. The survival of the one is inextricably linked to the survival of the other. The mammoth needs the human science to return.
This
The human
majestic
needs the mammoth's
creature
ecosystem to
roamed
endure.
the prehistoric
As the calf turns away,
tundra.
breaking the gaze to strip
Now,
bark from a willow branch,
cutting-edge
the
science.
message remains in the silence of the room. The past is not dead, the past is simply waiting. The earth remembers everything. The layers of ice, the sediment in the lake beds, the sequences in the DNA, all are records of what works and what fails. The return of the woolly giant is not a novelty, it is a second chance. It is a signal that the circle of time is closing. The stewardship of the planet requires looking back to move forward. The lights in the facility dim, mimicking the twilight of the Arctic winter. The young giant settles down into the straw, the breathing slow and rhythmic. Outside, the wind howls, carrying the heat of a changing world.
The
lesson of the
resurrection
mammoth
of
is
an
written in the
ice
bone and the
age
ice.
giant
Adaptation
begins
is the only
not
law,
in the
and respect for the
wild,
intricate
but
web of life
here,
is the only shield against extinction.
meticulously
The
edited,
future is unwritten,
one
but
cell
the ink
at a
is the same
time.
blood that ran through the veins of the
Microscopic
titans.
visualization
The choice remains with the observer on the other
confirms
side of the
successful
glass, to
entry
learn from the
into
silence
the
of the steppe,
nucleus.
or to join the giants in the
Target
stillness of the fossil
DNA
record.
sequence located.
Analyzing structure. Substitution in progress. Structure verified.